Shall we begin, ma'am?
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Humble pranams to the gathering. Welcome you all to this beautiful evening, marking the valedictory function of AyurCon 2022, 7th day of National Ayurveda Web Conference. Let me begin by quoting the inspirational words of John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. We have such leaders on the dais to add glory to our valedictory ceremony. With great joy and immense pleasure, I extend my warm welcome to all dignitaries, guests, and delegates present here for the AyurCon 2022 and National Ayurveda Web Conference organized by DIKSHA Academy under the banner of Ayurveda Amritkal, initiated under the visionary guidance of Indian government. India is marching ahead with the vision of making India a real leader in all aspects. To contribute towards this vision of making traditional medicine more accessible to all during Amritkal, let's become a part of history marking the golden period of Ayurveda. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Nisha Kumari ma'am, Academic Advisor of DIKSHA Academy, who is currently working as a professor and HOD, Kundapura Rural Ayurveda Medical College and Hospital, Udupi, Karnataka, to invite Dr. Tanmay Goswami sir for the inaugural address. Over to you, ma'am.
Dr. Tanmay sir has an emergency right now, so we will proceed our function with Suhas sir's note.
Okay, ma'am.
Audience, kindly wait. We'll revert to you soon. Stay online.
Sorry, delegates. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Suhas Kumar Shetty, sir, to address the gathering. Before handing over the session, I would like to take the privilege of introducing Dr. Suhas Kumar Shetty, sir. Dr. Suhas Kumar Shetty, sir, is an Ayurvedic practitioner, academician, researcher, and administrator who is specialized in mental health. Currently, he is holding a post of principal and medical director at KLA Academy of Higher Education and Research, Sri BM Kanganawadi Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Belagavi. He is also an adjunct faculty at Southern California University of Health Science, California, USA. He is the recipient of various academic awards like Pratibha Puraskara Award for Social Service in the Treatment of Alcoholic Disorders and Paralysis, Bishop Puraskar 2018, Teacher of the Year 2021. He is expertised in clinical research, research methodology, and medical statistics workshops. I welcome you, sir. I hand over the session to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A very good evening to all of you. On behalf of DIKSHA Academy and the entire organizing committee of AyurCon 22, a national webinar on the Medava Srotas and its understanding. I'm very happy to be a part of this particular webinar. And I really appreciate and congratulate the entire organizing team of DIKSHA Academy for organizing this wonderful seminar on different aspects of the Medava Srutas. As we all know that now at present we have different types of non-communicable disorders. And the major cause of this is our faulty diet and lifestyle. And to add to that, definitely the different aspects of the stress and its impact on an individual. That's why probably I really appreciate the organizers for selecting a very apt topic on the discussion on the different aspects of the Medova Srotas, its basic understanding, its management. We also had different perspective talking from its the Chikitsa Sutra, different types of plant diet, different types of diet and lifestyle advisors, the Rasayana Prayoga. So we had different perspective of in fact, the entire Medava Srotas and its management. And to add to this, today also we have a very interesting seminar and a topic by Dr. Ram Manohar, who will be talking about, again, the different aspects of the management of the Medava Srotas. So I'm sure everyone is looking forward for the session by Dr. Ram Manohar. And the entire academy, which is very well known for propagating Ayurveda and its learning through this platform, has been able to reach different people across not only India, but also different the entire globe. So for this, I think I really should admire and appreciate the entire team for taking up different activities. It could be different types of free webinars, which happens very oftenly through DIKSHA Academy. We also have some very promising courses on different clinical aspects like rheumatology, cosmetology, neurology. So I think there are different very, very interesting courses which have been offered by very, very expertised people who have been taken together for training different aspects or different people who are interested in the clinical practice of Ayurveda. At the same time, I really appreciate the team for conducting different types of medical camps in different states of India, where they are trying to reach people through the basic concepts of Ayurveda and trying to see how Ayurveda could be reached to the common man. As we all know, this particular webinar is being conducted on the occasion of the 7th National Ayurveda Day. And as we all know, that the theme for this year happens to be Har Din Har Ghar Ayurveda. So most of the time, the Ayurvedic celebration happens within the Ayurvedic fraternity. And that is where probably the Ministry of Ayush realized that probably we have to reach Ayurveda to each with this goal that every day, every minute, and every person, everywhere, we should be able to reach Ayurveda. So with this intention, I think it is aptly selected the theme for this year as Har Din Har Ghar Ayurveda. Because not only in the management, but Ayurveda has a great potentials in the preventive as well as promotive aspects of health. As you know that there are a lot of people suffering with different kinds of disorders, spanning from physical disorders, psychological disorders, different types of infectious disorders. To add on, recently we all have been having a great impact of the COVID and its long COVID impact. So when it comes to such major health issues, I think the traditional system of medicine, especially Ayurveda, has a great potentials. And if we could implement the basic concepts and if we can make it available for the people, able to educate and bring more awareness among the people, and definitely the whole goal of reaching Ayurveda to each and celebrating every day as Ayurveda Day, every home being a part of Ayurveda will definitely be fulfilled. So I really appreciate the entire team and wish them all the very, very best for the very different academic adventures and different academic content that they are coming up with. And it's really a great joy to be associated with DIKSHA Academy in conducting various types of academic programs. Apart from the different session that we had in this particular conferences, where we had Dr. Ramakant speaking on the metabolic disorders and its Ayurvedic perspective, We also had Dr. Jitesh M, who spoke on the concept of Rasayana or application of Rasayana in the management of Medova Sruta. We had an excellent session by Padma Shri Vaidya Balendu Prakash on how Ayurveda can be a promising option in the management of acute as well as chronic pancreatitis. We had Pundarikshak Rao sir talking about the different Jatu Urdhvagata Vikaras and its management. Dr. Prasanna Mogasale sir speaking on the different aspects of Prameha, its understanding and its management. From Banaras Hindu University, we had Dr. Mangala Gauri, who spoke about the role of Ayurvedic diet and the management and lifestyle in the management of different types of metabolic disorders. We also had a very, very interesting session by Dr. Isha Kumari on the bird's eye view on Nidana and the Samprapti of Vedavikara. And Dr. Shrikesh Damle, who spoke on the plant diet with special reference to the super ancient foods and its role in the lipid regulations. And we also had a very, very interesting and a very informative session by Dr. Niranjan Rao, who spoke on the Chiksa Sutra as well as the Rasayana Prayoga in Vedavikara. And of course, we all will have one more very interesting session we followed after this valedictory program by Dr. Ram Manohar, who will be talking about Nais Tulasya Beshijam, the Ayurvedic approach and management of different disorders related to the Medavaha Vikaras. So I think the overall, we would definitely would have got a very good idea of how potentials Ayurveda can be in different aspects, because it's a time when people really the whole world is looking towards Ayurveda for the management of the different disorders. And one such definitely will be the Medava Sroto Vikaras, where Ayurveda has a great potentials in not only in the preventive aspect, but also in the management of various types of disorders. We had different experts who have shared their clinical experiences in the management with not only the concepts, but also their experiences with the practice of Ayurveda in different disorders. And apart from this particular event, apart from the different sessions that we had by the experts, by different practitioners, become academicians, researchers, we also had different competitions that were conducted by DIKSHA Academy on the occasions of AyurCon 22, which was a National Ayurveda Web Conference, which was conducted in connection with the 7th National Ayurveda Day. And I'm very happy to announce the winners of the poster competition as well as the different paper competitions which has been taking place. And I really, first of all, appreciate and congratulate all the participants for taking keen interest in participating in the poster competition, as well as in the paper presentation competition. And there was a huge response for this particular event. And at the outset, on behalf of the organizers, I really appreciate and really not only the students, but also their guides and their teachers, their mentors, who have helped them in coming out with wonderful concepts and wonderful presentations. So first, I would like to announce the winners of the poster competition. So the third prize in the poster competition is bagged by Dr. Deepa JK from Alvas Ayurvedic Medical College and Hospital, Mudvidre. Hearty congratulations, Dr. Deepa, for bagging the third prize. The second prize is by Meenal Banduje Gurnale from R.V. Poddar Medical College, Worli, Mumbai. Hearty congratulations, Dr. Meenal. And the first prize in the poster competition is won by Vaidya Pankaj Mohan Patil, again from R.V. Poddar Medical College, Worli, Mumbai. I really congratulate all the participants as well as the winners for the poster presentation competitions. So now coming to the paper presentation competition, the first prize is won by Dr. Manjusha B, second year PG scholar from Government Ayurveda Medical College, Bengaluru. Hearty congratulations, Dr. Manjusha. The second prize is won by Dr. Anaga B.R. from Sri Sri College of Ayurvedic Medical Sciences and Research, Bengaluru. And the third prize is won by Dr. Bhaskar B. from Sri Jagadguru Gavi Siddheshwara Ayurvedic and Medical College, Koppala. I really appreciate and I congratulate all the winners of the paper presentation. And really, the interest that we see in the present generation students are really appreciable. And I wish them many, many more academic credentials in their futures. At the same time, I'm very happy to share with you all that the team of DIKSHA Academy and our university, the KLE Academy of Higher Education and Research, Belgavi, and KLE Sri B.M. Kankanwadi Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Belgavi, will be very happy to associate with each other to jointly organize the free webinars on every first and third Wednesday from the month of January 2023. I'm very sure we'll be very happy to come out with very interesting and very informative sessions, which will really inspire the young generation and also the practitioners, doctors, academicians across the globe, and again, popularizing and able to reach Ayurveda to each. It will be a wonderful experiences for us. We are very happy to be associated with DIKSHA Academy with conducting this particular academic venture. And I'm sure this will be a very great success and we would like to have a very long way to go with each other. So I would like to thank the entire organizing team of DIKSHA Academy for being able to associate with our university and our institution at KLE Sri B.M. Kankanwadi Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Belgavi, to conduct this free webinar, which will be hosted on every first and third Wednesday from January 2023. So I think I really would like to acknowledge each one of the resource persons, participants, organizers for wonderfully conducting this particular webinar and wishing this webinar a grand success. And the entire team needs a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As you said, it's high time for us to propagate and promote our science. Thank you for your valuable words, sir. And we had almost 200 plus presentators from all over the nation for this venture, sir, among which first best 12 presentators were selected for the finale. And among them, only 3 of them were selected. So I need to emphasize on the point that it was not an easy task to be a winner of this presentation, sir. So I congratulate all the winners and all the participants who have participated in this presentation. Sir has already said, but indeed I need to once again say, convey that we are happy to announce that we, DIKSHA Academy and KLE Sri B.M. Kanganawadi Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya, Shahapur, Belagavi, Karnataka is jointly organizing free webinars on every first and third Wednesdays from the month of January 2023. Once again, thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants. Next, I would like to welcome Vaidya P. Ram Manohar sir, our guest of honor, to address the gathering. Before handing over the session, I would like to take the privilege of introducing Vaidya P. Ram Manohar sir. Vaidya P. Ram Manohar sir completed his UG from Bharatiya University, Coimbatore, and PG from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science, Bengaluru. He is presently serving as Director of Amrita Center for Advanced Research in Ayurveda. He is also the research head of Amrita School of Ayurveda, managed by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeeth. He also passes magical hands over wide range of programs like Rudra and Dhara. Sir even let his knowledge engraved through 60 publications. Under his editorial leadership, Ancient Science of Life became the largest PubMed indexed research journal in the field of Ayurveda. He was honored with many awards like Ayurveda Marga Pravartaka Award, Vaidya Sundarla Joshi Smriti Shodha Puraskar, Bharatwaja Puraskar Award, Dr. C. Dwaraganath Memorial Award, and so on. He was also the co-author and PI on the Indian side of research study on rheumatoid arthritis that won the Excellence in Integrative Medicine Research Award from European Society of Integrative Medicine in 2012. Once again, I welcome you, sir. I would like to hand over the session to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Namaste. Good evening to everybody, and also the distinguished, dignitaries here, Dr. Tanmay Goswamiji, Dr. Suhas Kumar Shetty, and all others. I'm very happy to be present on this platform today. And I would, at the outset, like to congratulate DIKSHA Academy for this initiative in connection with the Ayurveda Day. As Dr. Suhash Shetty mentioned, this celebration is part of the initiative of the ministry to take Ayurveda outside the Ayurvedic community. And as the theme, indicates for the Ayurveda Day, this they take it to the lives of the people. Har din, har ghar. I mean, it should become part of our daily life. So it's a great vision. And all the efforts, I think a lot of collective efforts are needed to take this message to every home. And this AyurCon 2022 also, I think, is on a very relevant topic because Medovas Rodas is related to lifestyle diseases. It is our lifestyle more than anything else that disturbs the Medovas Rodas and metabolic syndrome, dyslipidemia. These are all the causes for many non-communicable diseases. And two of the major killer diseases today are heart disease and cancer. And both of them are linked to Dushti or the Medhavas Rotas, not to speak of diabetes. So what I have understood, there are just four diseases, four categories of diseases that are responsible for about 70% of the world's global health burden. And these are the non-communicable diseases: cardiovascular disease, cancer, then respiratory diseases, and diabetes. So these are actually the stronghold of Ayurveda, and it is, I think, only through the understanding of Ayurvedic way of living, healthy diet, and balance that we can ultimately, handle this epidemic. We just went through the COVID-19 epidemic. Because of its intensity and dramatic nature, we became very aware of it. But we don't know that NCDs are also an epidemic. It's much more powerful epidemic than even COVID-19 and taking away so many lives every day. No, only thing is, it is not being reported on a daily basis how many people are dying, how many people are affected. If we were to show the statistics like we used to see of COVID every day, I mean, it would be very shocking. So Medava, I think I'm not going to talk more about this because I will be lecturing on this very shortly. So I think it is the responsibility of all Ayurveda, practitioners, to make it their responsibility to take the message of Ayurveda everywhere, including from young children, schools. Because in Ayurveda we say that it's pratnya. I like to translate pratnya as arogya buddhi or health intelligence. What we need today is health intelligence, how to live healthily, not more and more medicines or more and more hospitals. That is the irony today. More and more hospitals are coming, and more sick people are also emerging. This is a vicious circle. And I think Ayurveda is a solution to break this vicious circle. We can align ourselves to the UNSDG 3, with wishes for all the people to achieve the highest health. And that is the vision of Ayurveda. So let me conclude by saying that our vision through Ayurveda Day and the propagation of Ayurveda should be health intelligence for all. I've been repeating it in many occasions that it is not health for all, it is not universal health coverage. Both are not enough. We need to work on that. It's health intelligence for all. The only way we can create a healthy society is spreading the awareness of health. And that is where Ayurveda comes into the picture. And that is what I think we mean by Har Din, Har Ghar Ayurveda, because we live with that intelligence or awareness of a healthy life. So with these words, I will stop for now. Namaste, thank you, and best wishes and congratulations again to DIKSHA Academy for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Delegates, sir will be elaborating the session soon. But before that, I would like to invite Dr. Ankur sir to deliver a vote of thanks. I would like to welcome Dr. Ankur Sir, Program Coordinator of DIKSHA Academy, to deliver vote of thanks.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
So, good evening, one and all. So, at least we have come to the conclusion of a great webinar conference, National Ayurveda Web Conference, AyurCon 2022. So, I'm directly jumping to my duty to give vote of thanks to every one of you who have attended this great session of AyurCon 2022 National Ayurveda Day Web Conference. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Tanmay Goswami sir, who unfortunately could not join us, but who was there for with us for this great event. Thank you, sir, for your auspicious presence. I'd also like to thank Dr. Suhash Sethi sir, who delivered the presidential address as well as announced the great winners of this Ayurveda Web Conference and the AyurCon 2022 poster presentation and paper presentations. Also, I would thank Dr. Ram Manohar sir, who is also going to speak about is going to lead our session too. So I thank you, sir, for your auspicious presence. And I would like to mention some other personalities like Dr. Gautam Shetty sir, Dr. Nishakumari ma'am, and Dr. Supriya ma'am, who were our beloved judges of paper presentation for their sincere efforts to select the best among those 152 presenters who were there. And also, I would like to mention a special name of Dr. Yaduk Gopan, who is Assistant Professor of Department of Kaichikals, SDM Hassan, to give us the thought and also the name of this special great event, which was a huge success among us. And also, I would like to thank our digital partners, Chem Street and Margareta Mote from Brazil, for their great support. As well as I do convey my sincere thanks on behalf of DIKSHA Academy towards all the faculties and all the participants who wholeheartedly gave their efforts to make this event a great success. And I also thank each and every one of you who are hearing this great event and supporting us and be with us. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, sir. It's beyond a doubt that all our knowledge begins with experience. So, once again, I would like to invite Dr. P. Ram Manohar sir to take a session on Nahi Sthulasya Bheshajam, Ayurvedic approach to the management of diseases of Medo Vahasrotas. Over to you, sir.
So, yeah, thank you very much. So I'll just share my slides in a moment. Just a second. Yes. Yeah, so today's topic is Nahi Sthulasya Bheshajam. I'm sure most of you are, aware of this verse from Ashtanga Hridayam, which tells us about the prognosis of, obesity. And I have always been, stuck by this particular statement, which is very bluntly stating that there is no medicine for obesity. This is especially interesting because today so many medicines and shortcuts are being propagated for the management of obesity. including health supplements, and which are supposed to produce magical results. So people advertise all this, and even in the name of Ayurveda, this is being propagated. But it's very interesting that Ayurveda itself has pointed out that there is actually no shortcut to obesity. And today I would like to talk also in the light of my own personal experience, because at just at the time of the COVID, I was struck by the sudden realization that I had developed, obesity grade 2, according to the current, definitions, with the BMI very high, above 30, which is, grade 1 obesity, almost going to grade 2 with very increased weight, 95. And I know that in my personal experience, I have tried many medicines. I had many issues associated with obesity, like I had begun to go into pre-diabetic stage. Cholesterol levels had increased, and then I was also almost hypertensive, at the borderline, and sometimes dipping into the clear category of hypertension. And another problem, due to overweight, there was also plantar fasciitis. It was not a good situation, and at this time is when I got infected also with COVID. So I really wanted to come out of this, and I tried a lot of medicines. I had in fact started doing this a bit earlier, but with only limited results. So medicines couldn't bring, cholesterol levels would come down, but not to normalcy. Blood pressure may get a little dip, but again, not significant. So in my personal experience, what I've understood is that when we bring very radical changes in lifestyle and diet, the results are dramatic. So looking back now, I can say I lost around 19 to 20 kilos in the last 2 years, and I'm no longer hypertensive. My blood pressure even today morning was only 110/70, and HbA1c is within the non-diabetic range. At one point, cholesterol levels even came down to 147 from 258 without taking medicines. When I was taking medicines, I didn't get this result. So I personally understood this concept, and I want to interpret this in this light of my own experience. Nahi sthulasya bheshajam does not mean that obesity cannot be treated at all. Because even when I was a student, I used to think, what is this interpretation? Does it mean that obesity cannot be treated at all, or does it mean that obesity does not have a medicine? Now, with my experience, I am convinced that what our acharyas meant is that there is no medicine. Obesity cannot be handled by only medicine. But what we really need is a comprehensive also lifestyle approach, and medicines can be supportive, but not the only measure for reducing or controlling obesity. So with this background and experience, I would like to share some thoughts on how Ayurveda looks at the diseases of Medova Srotas. Obesity is one major outcome of the Dushti of Medova Srotas. Even without obesity, you can have dyslipidemia. But my focus is more today on Sthaulyam and the attendant conditions. So when we think about Medas has got a bad reputation today, and we tend to look very negatively at fat. But we must understand that in Ayurveda, we have visualized the human being as snehasaroyam purushaha. That in essence, we are fat, we are sneha, we are oil. So in the deepest essence, for the health of the body, actually fat is necessary. So the human being is made up of the essence of sneha. This is something which we must understand also when we move forward, that we cannot give up, fats. Fat is very essential for the maintenance of our human body. So what is exactly this Medova Srota Dushti, and what is the role of Srotas? What are the positive and negative aspects of fat or medas in our body. So that is what I would like to highlight. And the foundational principle is sneha saraha. So that is why ultimately health is established by bringing back, not by completely eliminating medas from our system, but by restoring the health of the medas. This is very important Ayurvedic approach. So we know we have sneha pana, we have oil. Ayurveda uses oil in so many ways, which may appear even frightening to the modern society who are so sensitized about fats. Externally and internally we use oils a lot. This is based on this Ayurvedic concept of sneha saroyam purushaha, including ghee in snehapana. So it is natural that people may even think that this Ayurvedic lifestyle, is it actually encouraging the use of fats and oils in an unhealthy way. We know that coconut oil was blamed also for promoting cardiovascular diseases in states like Kerala, where it is very highly used. So there are some myths. So we look at all these things in the light of new evidence that is emerging. But at the outset, I'd like to revisit our basic concept of the dhatu cycle. So in Ayurveda we say rasad raktam tado mamsad medaha. So what does this mean? What is the connection between Mamsa Dhatu and Medo Dhatu? How does actually the Medas produce? I'd like to point out some interesting findings that when you build lean muscle mass, as your muscle increases, actually additional energy is required, and this makes your resting metabolic rate very high. So if you increase your muscle, then more fat is burned. If you don't nourish your muscles, then at the cost of mamsa dhatu, medo dhatu increases. So one of the ways to prevent medas from building in your body is to strengthen your muscles, and this seems to indirectly link with our idea of mamsad medaha, that if you don't develop the muscle, then medas may keep increasing. And the similar way, medasah asti, from medas comes asti. So here also there are findings today that obesity, if more and more medas builds in your body, your bone is affected. Obesity adversely affects bone health by a variety of mechanisms, such as an alteration of bone regulating hormones, increased oxidative stress and inflammation, and altered bone cell mechanism. So I'd like to open our discussion by pointing out that some of the concepts of Ayurvedic understanding of physiology are also being supported through indirect observations in modern scientific studies. So, and we'll come back to the relevance of this logic when we choose the appropriate lifestyle and diet. So now let us look at Medova Srotas, because that is the focus of our conference and also today's discussion. And we can see that there are differences of opinion between Charaka, Sushruta and Vakpada as to what exactly is the mula of the Medova Srotas. So according to Sushruta, they are the Kati and Vrikau, and he gives a lot of examples to identify what has happened when injury happens. Of course, Sushruta being a surgeon, he's talking about injury to the Medava Srotas. And you can see here that thirst, sweat, then dryness of the palates, obesity, these are excessive sweating is linked with medas, and then thirst and staulya are linked with the disturbance of the even injury. This needs further discussion. How can injury to the Medava Srotas cause these outcomes, which seems to be more related to metabolic processes, but we'll come back to that later. When it comes to Charaka, instead of Kati, he talks about Vapavahanam, peritoneum or omentum, layers covering and protecting the abdominal organs. So I have been kind of thinking about this, and if you really look at the variation of Sushruta referring to Kati and Charaka to Vapavahanam, it looks like Sushruta was referring to subcutaneous fat, because in the Kati region, when fat is deposited, this is called as pear-shaped obesity, which is seen more in women. And this is subcutaneous fat, which is not as harmful as the other type of fat that modern medicine looks at, which is actually visceral fat. And Vapavahanam is, around the internal organs, and this visceral fat is more harmful actually. So if you look at Charaka and Sushruta, between them they seem to have pointed out two locations where fat is stored. Sushruta pointing to the subcutaneous fat, and Charaka to the visceral fat. And Charaka talks about Medova Srodhas, and he gives you a much broader spectrum of conditions that can come, like, hormonal genetic problems. So we know today that, dyslipidemia can be caused by both lifestyle as well as, genetic causes. And again, when you bring Charaka and Sushruta together, you get the understanding that Medovaha Sroto Dushti can be caused both by genetic factors as well as by lifestyle factors. Probably this is why Vagbhada wanted to synthesize the views of both Charaka and Sushruta. In many, many cases, we find that when we synthesize the views of both acharyas, we get a more complete picture. So when we synthesize the views of Charaka and Sushruta, we get, an understanding of visceral fat as well as, subcutaneous fat, and also that Medova Sroto Dushti can be caused by genetic factors as well as by lifestyle factors. And kidney is commonly seen, and there are studies which have shown how impaired fat metabolism affects, kidney and causes kidney disease also. Again, we'll visit this point later. Now, when you come to Vagbhada, there is another moolam of the Srotas, which is Mamsa. So according to Vagbhada, Vrika and Mamsa are the... so Vagbhada is probably talking about the physiological development of Medas, because it is from Mamsa that Medas comes. And Medas is also associated with the production of a lot of kleda in the system, which is why when you have excess Medas in the system, there is more Sweda. And in diabetes, it is clearly mentioned that the Medova Sroto Dushti causes kleda in the body, mixing with kapha and kleda, and that is how it comes to the Mutrava Srotas and produces this prameha. So probably that is why Vrika has been associated with Medova Srotas. But putting all these things together, we can see that our acharyas give us a lot of hints about this is how I have understood, looking at the Mula of the Srotas as according to the three acharyas. I come to the understanding that Medova Sroto Dushti can be caused by both lifestyle and, genetic factors, and that Medova Srotas is very closely related with Kleda, Vahana, and the excretory process of Sweda and Mutra. So therefore, it is linked with the kidneys. And then we have the subcutaneous fat, the visceral fat, and then the role of the muscle in regulating the, health of the Medova Srotas. So the fact that Vagbhada has also linked Medova Srotas with muscle is very interesting, because if we increase our muscle mass, then gradually, definitely we are regulating and bringing back the health of the Medova Srotas. So today, many things, many concepts in modern medicine, like even the microbes, fat, we think that these are our enemies, and these views are slowly changing. And that is what I think in Ayurveda we can bring a more comprehensive and complete understanding, because now we think microbes are our enemies. Similarly, we think the way, the awareness is spreading, we think that fat is our enemy. Any type of fat is bad. That view has to change, and we must understand what is good and what is bad about fats, what is good and what is bad about the microbiome. Today we know that microbes outnumber our cells by 10 times maybe, So we are a microbial colony, and we cannot survive if we destroy all the microbes that live with us. So it's not that all microbes are harmful. In fact, if you look at it, just like we say snakes, the number of poisonous snakes are very less. The number of non-poisonous snakes are more, and they are required for the ecosystem to be balanced, which is why in ancient days they had sacred groves, and they found that we had to do something to protect and preserve the snakes. So in our fight against microbes and the fat, we must not forget that we need to preserve the good fat and we need to preserve the good microbes. So microbiome studies, microbiota, all these things are coming. We are taking probiotics, prebiotics, doing even fecal transplant. And similarly, a new era is going to emerge where we are going to think about good fats. Already there are discussions about good fats like omega 3s, omega 9, and all those things. And we will also look at this whole debate and see how Ayurveda can give a more balanced approach to understanding, Medava Srotas. So one interesting thing in Ayurveda is that the Medava Srotas today, as the title indicates, Medava Sroto Dushti can lead to a spectrum of problems, not all of which are associated with obesity. But today, our discussion is going to focus more on the obesity spectrum. Anyway, it's a short lecture and we cannot discuss everything about the Medava Srotas. So it's clearly mentioned in Charaka Samhita where the strong correlation between Medava Srotas and diabetes has been established. And when the fat transporting channels are contaminated or disturbed, the premonitory symptoms of prameha, diabetes, or urinary disorders are manifested. So people in whom the fat metabolism gets disturbed will be prone to get diabetes in the future. So this link between Medava Srotas and diabetes has been very, very clearly mentioned in the Charaka Samhita. And we'll quickly go through three perspectives of our acharyas. So the way I want to discuss today is to give some snippets, some insights from the classical Ayurvedic texts, and then present some modern findings and then see how we can synthesize the two to get a more complete understanding. We cannot completely ignore modern studies and modern measurements and tools, but sometimes they are not fully accurate or give you a complete understanding. Like for example, BMI. I just read recently a paper saying that we should not check the BMI of patients because it is causing a stress and it doesn't really reflect the actual health condition of an individual. What is more important is the distribution of visceral fat and not just the BMI. So even a metric like BMI and its clinical relevance is being discussed, in a fresh perspective. So we cannot go by all these modern findings because they are new findings and they're trying to get meaning and understand the relevance of these different metrics clinically, and the opinions and findings are also evolving. So everything that is there in modern discussions about fat cannot be taken on face value, but we cannot ignore them either. So that's why I'd like to, at the outset, give an Ayurvedic discussion and then go and examine what's happening in the research front from the modern point of view also. So Sushruta, this is from Sushruta Samhita. Rasa nimittameva staulyam karshyam cha. So this is interesting because Sushruta is telling that ultimately it is all related to rasa dhatu, and we will find that it's not just fat. Most of us have the impression, the general public, that it is by taking more fat that we increase the fat in our system, but it's not necessarily so. It all depends on the quality of the rasa dhatu that is made out of the food that we eat. And we know today that simple carbohydrates are also very much responsible. It all depends on how the food that you take in gets metabolized in the system. Is it going to be stored as fat, or is it going to be used up as energy? So Sushruta's insight that rasa nimittameva, he ultimately puts the blame on rasa. So tatra shleshmal ahara sevino adhyashanashilasya avyayamino divaswapnaratasya chama evannaraso madhuratarascha shariram anukraman atisnehad medo janayati. So this is a very, very interesting description where he talks about not intake of excess fat, but intake of sleshmalahara sevinaha. So from this, it's very evident that what Sushruta is pointing out is that the intake of aharas that are sleshmala is actually the cause for medo dushti, and not really the intake of sneha, excess oils or fats. I think this is a very, very interesting observation, and that because Ayurveda has not blamed fats as such. As I mentioned in the beginning, the whole theme of our discussion is Sneha Saroyam Purushaha. Our health depends on the health of our fat. So what we need to do is to improve the health of the fat in our body. And that may not necessarily happen by just giving up all the fats. So Sleshma Ahara Sevino Adhyasana Shilasya. So two clear indications in the diet that can lead to Medova Sroto Dushti is Sleshmalahara Sevana and Adhyashana. So these are very simple, observations, but very, very relevant. It's not what you eat, but how you eat. Also, that matters. Adhyasana, before you digest the previous food, if you eat again, that is actually causing more problem, because that leads to accumulation of this the rasadhatu in the body, which then gets converted into fat. Avyayamino, and then the lifestyle. Divaswapnaratasya. So if you are not physically active and even in the daytime you are sleeping and you are eating sleshmala ahara and adhyasana, this is the death equation where ama eva annaraso madhura tarascha. You can see here he uses the word madhura tarascha, means extremely sweet. Annarasa becoming extremely sweet. Is this a reference to hyperglycemic condition? I don't know. We cannot claim that, but the term that Sushruta has used is very interesting. Madhura tarascha. If I eat my food and look my postprandial glucose in the blood, and if it is very high, is it not correct to term that as madhuratara annarasa? Are we not seeing madhuratara annarasa in our blood? So it's almost that he seemed to have pointed out the existence of madhuratara rasa and a very high glucose in the blood. Shariram anukraman, and this excess madhuratara annarasa is invading the whole body, and atisnehat medo janayati. So nowhere in Ayurveda has it been told that excess intake of oil is actually causing dyslipidemia or obesity, but it is only Sleshmalahara plus Adhyashana. Even Sleshmalahara alone cannot cause. Sleshmalahara plus Adhyashana plus Avyayama and Divaswapna. So which means physically in the daytime, if you are not active. This combination is what leads to increase of medas, and this increase of medas cause tadatis taulyam apadayati. So from this I think it's an amazingly beautiful but very concise, very precise description of this whole process of medodushti and the development of obesity. I found that it was only in the Sushruta Samhita. So it's good to, as they say, ekam shastram adhyanona vidyat shastram nishem, or यदि चरगमधीरे तत् सुश्रुतादि प्रणिगदित गदानां नामपात्रे विवाहि अथ चरगविहीन प्रक्रियायामखिन्नखिमिव खलु करोतु व्याधिदानां वराग. So we need to study all the text, but very critically, and then it's like solving a jigsaw puzzle. You get a lot of pieces, you put them together, you get a more complete picture. So this is how Staulyam comes, and tam atisthulam, and this atisthula. So here it is very interesting that in Ayurveda we have used the word atistaulyam. Again and again, not only Sushruta, all acharyas have. If we read the original text, it is very interesting because they have used these certain interesting terminologies. I always wondered why they have used atistaulyam. Why they have not just used staulyam? Tam atisthulam. So probably they are trying to point out that we don't notice staulyam until it really goes out of control. Even obesity, it does not create problems until a long time. There are a lot of people who are sthula but metabolically normal. I can tell you from my own experience, I have been metabolically normal until 50 years of age, even though I became overweight and obese much earlier. That was something which made me, because I was thinking in the Ayurvedic way that sneha saroyam purusha, so it's okay if I increase weight as long as my metabolic parameters are normal. I never everything was normal. But after 50, slowly things began to suddenly change. And then, the metabolism, all these markers also metabolic. So now today I learned now that there are two ways in which obesity is classified. People with metabolically normal obesity and metabolically abnormal obesity. But what is alarming is that the new findings are that even if you have metabolically normal obesity, the risk, it will not last for long. They will all eventually become metabolically abnormal, and all the risk for a metabolically abnormal obese person is also there for a metabolically normal. So we cannot just go by lipid profile or other blood parameters. We have to also consider obesity as such. So, but most of these problems manifest only when you reach the stage of atisthulyam. So, tam atisthulam, kshudrashwasa pipasa chut swapna sweda gatra daurgandhya krathana gatra sada gadgadatvani kshipramev avishanti saukumaryan metasa sarva kriya swasamartha कभवेदो निरुद्ध मार्गत्वात् चाल्पव्यवायो भवति आवृत मार्गत्वादेव शेषा धातवो नाप्यायन्ते अत्यर्थमतो अल्पप्राणो भवति प्रमेह पिडगा ज्वर भगंधर वृद्रधि वाद विकाराणाम् अन्यतमं प्राप्य पंचत्वं वयादि सर्व एव चास्य रोगा बलवन्तो भवन्ति आवृत मार्गत्वात् स्रोतसाम् अतस्तस्य उत्पत्ति हेतुं परिहरेत्. So here Sushruta is talking about the most advanced stage of obesity and how it completely incapacitates the individual. Kshudrashwasa pipasa chut swapna sweta gatra daurgandhya krathana gatra sada gadgadatvani chiprameva avishanti. So once you reach that critical point of atisthulyam, then everything collapses. This is what I have also realized, that there is a long time, there's a tipping point. And I think Sushruta is talking about atisthulyam as the tipping point. The body is already struggling, but at that tipping point, everything begins to collapse. And kabhamedo nirud marga varanatvam, and that has been considered by Sushruta as one of the major aspects of this pathogenesis, avrida margatvam, which could include atherosclerosis, reduced blood supply to the brain, microvascular damage, and all those things are coming. And so he says that sarva eva chasya roga balavando bhavanti. They are alpa pranas. Their other dhadus are not nourished. Only medo dhatu is increasing, and they are sarva kriya swasamartha. And what is most interesting is that by acquiring some of these diseases, including vada vikaras, here hridroga has directly not been mentioned, but vada vikara, probably stroke or pakshagada, is one condition that may have been implied by Sushruta. Prapya panchatvam upayati. So he clearly, Sushruta points out that obesity leads to death. That obesity reduces lifespan and is a cause of not just morbidity but mortality, and that it builds up slowly, and at that tipping point of atisthulyam, that is when things can become very critical, and even before you realize, you can just die. And the diseases that manifest are so powerful that you have to prevent it. You have to take a preventive approach. Atastasya utpatti hetum pariharet. So it's very difficult to treat. So this is very important to understand, because it is true that such conditions are difficult to treat. That is why a lot of medicines and false promises are, spreading all around. And I think as Ayurveda clinicians, we shouldn't fall into that trap also. We shouldn't allow wrong messages to go. You can see Sushruta is very, very upfront, frank here by saying that but these diseases are very powerful, and so you have to really take a preventive approach. Utpanne tu, and then he says, so what Sushruta clearly says, prevent this from happening. Don't see. It is when you go to the Atisthaulia stage that really the problems happen, which means even in the Sthaulya stage, it is possible actually to do a lot of treatments. And then he advises a lot of medications like Shilajatu, Uggulu, Gomutra, Triphala, Loha, Rajo, Rasanjana, Mathu, Yava, Mudga, Koradusha, Shamago, Uddalagadinam, Virutshana, Chedaniyanam, Chadravyanam, Vithivad Upayogo, Vyayamo, Lekhana Vastipayogaschedi. So this is really very powerful. All these medicines can really support in reversing the effects of obesity. But one of the biggest challenges we are going to face is that when you reduce your fat, the subcutaneous fat will reduce fast and you come down to your core obesity. I mean, it's extremely challenging to finally reduce your visceral fat. So being a person who's waging this battle, I can very clearly tell that. And at a certain stage, after doing a lot of lifestyle and other changes, so Sushruta says, Atastasya utpatti hedum pariharet, means he's clearly telling avoid shleshmalaharas. I've completely, reduced rice and such other shleshmalahara sevana. Adhyasana shilasya, eating just twice a day, leaving a long gap between two meals. This is a very powerful way to quickly reduce. These are lifestyle changes, so it's not easy for people to be compliant. Medicines we look at as a shortcut. But if you do these lifestyle changes and then take the medicines, the effects will be even more dramatic. So that is why Sushruta has mentioned first, clearly given an importance to changing lifestyle and diet, and then coming to these medications. And in lifestyle and diet, unnecessary reduction of oil is not recommended in Ayurveda. So we'll come back to that. Why oil, ghee, coconut oil, all these things can still be helpful in the management of obesity and prevent the body from going into imbalance. What we need to really change is shift from avoid what is called as shleshmalahara. Now, so Sushruta gives us a very interesting perspective of how this whole dyslipidemia and obesity develop, whereas Charaka is giving us very beautiful insights on how impaired fat metabolism is related to diabetes. So let's just look at his beautiful description. I didn't want to even give a translation for these things because I think the original Sanskrit, we miss many insights if we translate it. So, Trayana Mesham Nidanadi Visheshanam Sannipade Chipram Shleshma Prakopama Badyande. So, here again you can see there is an importance for Shleshma, Prag Adibhuyastwad. Sa Pragupita Chiprameva Sharire Visruptim Labhade Sharira Shaidhilyad Sa Visarpan Sharire Medaseva Adido Misri Bhavam Gachati. So here also we can see that an increase of shleshma is what actually is leading to an excess formation of medas, which is what Sushruta is also talking about. Medasascheva bahu abaddhatvad medasascha gunai samana guna bhuishtatvad sa medasa misri bhavan dushayatyenat vikrudatvad sa vikrudo dushtena medasopahida sharira kleda mamsabhyam samsargam gachati. So I think what is interesting here is that the Shleshma Dushti is actually considered to be the cause of Medo Dushti. Medo Dushti is not happening directly. So our focus from an Ayurvedic point of view is to bring back Shleshma to the Prakrita Avastha. That is the only way we can regulate Medas. And what does this mean clinically is something we have to really think about. Now, there's a very interesting term here. I'm sure all of you have heard about it. And I'm also still speculating and trying to understand what this means. Bahu abadhatvan medasascha. The bahutvam and abadhatvam of medas. So that clearly shows a quantitative increase of medas, and abadhatvam means that it is free and moving around and then maybe depositing and placing itself wherever there is some available space. So it may be referring to this upachaya of medas in the body. And after this Shleshma and Medas increasing, Charaka is pointing out that Sharira Kleda Mamsabhyam Samsargam Gachadi Kleda Mamsayorati Pramana Abhivriddhatvad Samamse Mamsa Pradoshad Puti Mamsa Pedagaha Sharavika Kachapigadya Sanjanendi Aprakriti Bhudatvad Sharira Kledam Punar Dushayan Mutratvena Parinamayati Mutravahanam Chasrotasam Vangshanavasti प्रभवाणां मेद क्लेदोपहितानि गुरूणि मुखान्यासाद्य प्रतिरुध्यते तद प्रमेहान् तेषां स्थैर्यम् असाध्यनं वा जनयति प्रकृति विकृति भूतत्वात्. So actually we can see here that it is Medova Srotas that is at the basis of Prameha, and Shleshma Dushti is the cause for Medova Sroto Dushti, and Mutravas, Prameha is not primarily a disease of the Mutravas Rotas, it is a disease of the Medovas Rotas, but eventually the Mutravas Rotas also gets Dushta. So the whole target of in diabetes has to be on Medovas Rotas, and to control Medovas Rotas we have to regulate Shleshma, we have to bring back Shleshma to the Prakrita Avastha. There's a very interesting study which has proven this understanding today. This is called the direct trial. This has been conducted in Europe, and the study is still ongoing. And after the first 2 years, they came to the conclusion it's a weight-led management of diabetes. And it's very interesting. Their conclusion is that if you can reduce your weight by 10 to 15% when you have diabetes, even if you are on medications, if you are able to just reduce your weight by following a particular diet, then you are able to reverse your diabetes. So this finding is very, very interesting and important, because from this finding, what the conclusion they have arrived at is that for diabetes, it is not advisable to start immediately with medications. We are making a person permanently diabetic by starting medications very early. What should be done at the beginning is dietary lifestyle changes, and medications probably, that is where Ayurveda can really help. Because in modern medicine, it's just either medicines or extreme diet and lifestyle. Where we can support with a lot of our medications, we could be able to put brakes on the diabetic epidemic. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, that there is an alarming increase in pre-diabetic patients. And we were planning to do a study, and for a proposal, when we submitted the proposal, there were many allopathic doctors who were reviewing the proposal, and they said that we included some simple Ayurvedic medicines also along with diet and lifestyle for pre-diabetics, so that they can prevent the use of any strong medicines like metformin and be able to reverse their diabetes. But the allopathic doctors are the opinion that we should not give any medicine. So they have come to this point that in pre-diabetes or early stage of diabetes, don't give medicine, make the patient to just do diet and lifestyle, and then it is possible to actually cure diabetes. Means they don't need medications. But if you start medicines at that stage, then they become a lifelong diabetic. And we are finding it very difficult to convince them that what we give as medicines are different from the kind of anti-diabetic medicines that are given in modern management of diabetes, and this will actually help people to be more compliant to diet. So that's another issue and another challenge. But what I wanted to show is that these insights from Charaka and Sushruta, they are being rediscovered through many modern studies. And this direct trial is a very good example of how to manage early diabetes with lifestyle interventions and how to avoid medication. So this means we have come just one complete circle in the management of diabetes. Now here is another description which comes from Madhava Nidana, where Medo Roga pathogenesis has been mentioned, and I will also go through this. So with these three viewpoints, we get a lot of insights into how the Dushti of Medava Srotas happens. Avyayama Divaswapna Sleshmalahara Sevina. So Madhava again is a good example of having tried to synthesize the two views of Charaka and Sushruta. Avyayama and Divaswapna Sleshmalahara Sevina. So this is from Sushruta clearly, but he does not mention Adhyashana here, but again he emphasizes Sleshmalahara again. Madhuronna Rasapraya Snehan Meda Pravardhayed Meda Savrada Margatvad Pushyanti Anyena Dhatava. So this is a very clear description of all this excess rasa dhatu being converted into fat. That I think is in Madhava very clearly mentioned. Sushruta also mentions it, but this is much more explicit, that this excess buildup of rasa dhatu in the body makes that rasa getting converted. Medasa avrada margatvad pushyanti anyena nadhava medastu chiyade tasmat ashakta sarvakarmasu. And then all the other things are same as Sushruta, but here the visceral fat increase has been more clearly described by Madhava. In my opinion, we must read these classical descriptions very carefully, comparing and seeing what are the points that come. I'm always looking at these old texts for bits and pieces. It's like they have given us a jigsaw puzzle. Most of the time, we have to compile all the information, put them together and get the bigger picture. Anuktartha Grahanam. As Charaka has mentioned, when you read a Samhita, you must be ready to understand information that has not been directly mentioned. So, Buddhimadam tu Swanumana Yukti Kushalanam Anuktartha Grahanaya. So, when you synthesize the information from across text, we get a more complete picture. So he says here, out of all the places where Medas is getting deposited, Ata eva Medastu Sarva Bhudanam Udareshu Astishu Stidam Ata eva Odere Vruddhi Prayo Medas Vino Bhavet. So he is giving an explanation that this visceral fat is going to keep increasing. Udare vruddhi. And Medas avrada margatvad vayu koshte visheshada charan sandutchayatyagnim aharam shoshayatyabi. Tasmat sa shikram jarayatyaharam abhikankshati. Vikarans chapnude ghoran kanshit kalavyatikramad. So the whole reason why we have considered staulyam as difficult to cure, that is described in this context, because we are looking at it not just as an increase in medas, the people with obesity, and that is where we really need a proper dietary plan. Because in obese people, on the one hand, there is increase of vata, because only medo dhatu increases. There is a dhatu kshaya of other dhatus, and even asti dhatu is affected, as we can see, which is the sthana of vata. And there is a tremendous increase of Agni also, which is what makes Staulyam, Viruddhopa Kramatvam and difficult to manage. That is why Ayurveda says that Nahi Sthulasya Bheshajam. Vikarans Chapnude Ghoran Kansit Kala Vyatikraman Eta Upadravakarau Visheshad Agni Marutau. So in the whole context of Staulyam in Medo Dushti, our challenge is actually to tackle the problems being created by Agni and Vayu. And so this is a very beautiful poetic explanation given. Etau tu dakhata sthulam Vanadavo vanam yatha. Because we know when air and fire come together, what you have is a forest fire. So the body of an obese person is compared, to this condition where fire and air together create, a forest fire itself, which spreads so fast. Medasyativa samvriddhe sahasaivanilādaya vigaran darunan kritva नाशयन्त्याशु जीवितम् मेतो मांसादि वृद्धत्वाद् चलस्फिगरुदरस्थन अयथोपचयोत्साहो नरोति स्थूल उच्यते. So this atisthula concept is clear, but now I want to point out that in our treatment this is the biggest problem, that it is not possible. The best bet for a atisthula is to control their diet and lifestyle, and especially controlling diet is going to be difficult for a person who has obesity because of this agni vriddhi. And so how do we tackle this problem? It's most of the diets that are advised today are not practical. I don't know how many of you have heard of Dean Ornish. He was one of the first cardiologists to point out that blockages in coronary artery can be removed, can be, reversed only through diet and lifestyle, but not through medicine. He was the first person to point out that we need only lifestyle and diet. So reversing heart disease is one of his famous books, but it did not become a mainstream intervention because it's very difficult for people to comply with such a strict regimen. And the biggest challenge in treating obesity is that it's very difficult for obese people to restrict diet, and we cannot blame them. It's because of this metabolic condition that they have. They have extremely uncontrollable hunger, and then there is a vata vritti because of this. Only the medo dhatu is getting increased. The dhatu traya is happening, so the body is demanding more food, and vata is increasing on the one side, and that is the biggest challenge. And so Ayurveda can give a diet plan that can address this problem, because this understanding is still not there in modern medicine about the Agni and Vata complexity, in Medoraga. So this is what we learned from a quick review of what is described in Charaka, Sushruta, and then Madhava. And when you talk about Atistaulyam, I think today we can look at some of the modern concepts of BMI. BMI above 25 is considered overweight. So these are questions. What do we call in Ayurveda as thaulyam and atistaulyam? I did not find any term in Ayurveda. I'd like to pose this as a question. Maybe when we have a discussion, we can share some thoughts about it. Is there even a concept in Ayurveda as overweight, or is there a distinction between overweight and obesity? So in modern definition, they use BMI as an index. You're all aware of it. BMI above 30 being obesity grade 1, above 35 will be grade 2, and above 40 grade 3. Which of this is atistaulyam? So is obesity itself called atistaulyam? Or this is very important to know, because as I've also experienced and understood, sometimes reducing weight very drastically can also cause a lot of problems. And a person who has become obese, it may not be possible for them to completely come back to a normal BMI also, and it might produce a lot of stress. And that is one study that has happened now. If you start looking, there is a new guidance which says that don't look at the BMI of a patient unless it is necessary, because it is causing mental stress for the patient. Even asking for BMI is creating mental stress in the patient. So don't ask unless it is really necessary. So this gives us the point that when we are doing a treatment, it's very important to have a realistic goal. What would be a realistic goal of treatment? To bring back the person to what level of BMI, and what should be the metabolic parameters that we would consider safe for a person who has already become obese or gone very obese, because giving unrealistic treatment targets can be very stressful. So there are many views and opinions how much weight should be reduced. And the general consensus is that even a reduction of 10% of weight can have significant impact on the blood pressure, on dyslipidemia, on diabetes. With just 10% weight reduction, a lot of people with pre-diabetes have been able to come back to normalcy. So while for a healthy person we can have another target. I hope I'm able to convey what I mean. The target for a healthy person and target for already a person who's obese are different, and we may be able to use some of these modern parameters to create realistic targets. So with this overall introduction, I would like to come to the title of our topic, why we are talking about Nahi Sthulasya Bheshajam. So this is Vagbada mentioning Karshyameva Varam Sthaulyat Nahi Sthulasya Bheshajam Brahmanam Lankhanam Valam Ati Metogni Vadajit Madhura Snigdha Sauhityat Yat Saukhena cha Nashyati Krashimas Thavimatyanta Viparita Nishevane. So the reason why it has been mentioned that obesity is difficult to treat is because extraordinary efforts have to be taken to manage it. Even the lifestyle or diet is difficult, and just medicines alone cannot reverse this. So for all those reasons, generally Staulyam is considered to be difficult to treat. Now, when it comes to Medova Hasroto Dushti, one of the major etiological factors, after discussing this, I'd like to quickly go to some modern findings about dyslipidemia. But I don't know how many of us are aware of this, that sitting, this is one of the major reasons why, we are getting many of these diseases in Medova Sroto Dushti, apart from Sleshmalahara or Divaswapna or Avyayama. A big problem is sitting. Now, I'd like to ask a question, because I'm also feeling a bit strange just speaking to a blank screen. I cannot see anybody. So I like to ask a question just to see if people are there, and I'm actually, communicating with people on the other side. Does anybody have any opinion about whether this was discussed? Sitting, the problems of sitting, is it discussed anywhere in Ayurvedic texts? You can even type in the chat box. Okay, Margaret says no. Anybody else has heard? Dr. Bhavana, no. Has Ayurveda discussed the problems of sitting and how it can cause diseases? Yogi may say, no, in yoga we are all supposed to sit in asana always for dhyana. So Dr. Kala says yes. Where is it? Can you explain, Dr. Kala?
Dr. Kala, you could unmute yourself.
I hope it's okay to have a little interaction in between, because it's been almost an hour. So I like to make Avyavai may be considered for absence. So no, they have also mentioned Avyayama is directly mentioned. I'm talking about sitting, the problem of sitting. This is a very interesting and new finding. Mahadoshakar Bhav. Is it mentioned? Is there a reference? Have you all read or come across this? It's very interesting, because today there is a lot of discussion on sitting. We have come to a point where very good, Dr. Kala, I'm very impressed. Asya Sukham. This has been mentioned by Charaka. in Pramegha Nidana actually, not in, that is Kathina Utkatagasana. But here what is mentioned is, even if you sit comfortably and, Sthira Sukham Asanam, in yoga it is told that if you sit in an asana, it is good. So how do we reconcile this? Charaka says, Asya Sukham, Swapna Sukham Dadhini, Gramya Udaga Anupa, Rasamisham. So this is a cause for Prameha. This is a cause for the development of Medo Dushti. Sitting is the new smoking, according to, it's said to be even more harmful than smoking. So a lot of people may be thinking I'm a non-smoker, but if you are just sitting in a good modern easy chair, then you see what is happening. Electrical activity in the leg muscles shut off. What can you compare this with? Prana. The movement of prana in your system is getting shut off when you sit. But when you are sitting in a yogasana, the difference between yogasana and ordinary sitting is, when you sit in yogasana, you are not interrupting the movement of prana. So if you have to sit, you must sit only in yogasana. So probably this is the reason why in olden days they did not create the modern kind of comfortable chairs. Even our squatting position, everything is linked to a yoga pose. When the way we sit for a meal, the way we sit for work, we don't sit in the modern way of, where our pranic movement is blocked. So if a pranic movement is blocked, then it creates a problem. So yoga pose is the best pose to sit. So if you want to, if you want to work like a yogi. Create a situation in your office where you can sit like a yogi, not like a bogi. All these modern chairs, ergonomic chairs, are comfortable. Yes, they do protect your back and all that, but still that asya sukham is there. So electrical activity in the leg muscles shut off the moment you sit. And then calorie burning drops to 1 per minute. Your whole agni comes down significantly. Enzymes that help break fat drop 90%. Please keep that in mind. 90% your ability to burn fat is reduced just by sitting. And after 2 hours of sitting, good cholesterol drops 20%. And with 24 hours, insulin effectiveness drops 24% and the risk of diabetes rises. So just by sitting for 24 hours, you are increasing your risk for diabetes. So just see Charaka's wisdom when he said Asya Sukham as the first cause for developing diabetes. And today modern science is telling us that if you sit continuously, yes, so it's a good suggestion by Dr. Deepa. When you say Asya Sukham is not good, it doesn't mean that you must create dukkha. It only means, so in yogasana, it is training your body. In posture training is what is needed. How to sit, how to lie down, how to sleep, and still be in a sukha position, not in a dukkha position. That is why asana is defined as sthira sukham asanam. Your ability to keep your body regularly stable, in a stable way and in a comfortable way. Once you get established in an asana, then all these effects will not happen. Your electrical activity will not be disturbed. Your calorie burning will not be disturbed. Enzymes will still continue to break down fat. A yogi's body will never become obese. Good cholesterol will not reduce, and insulin resistance will not develop. So we need to learn how to sit also. And that is where you can bring Ayurveda and yoga together, how asanas help. This may be a very good way to bring yoga to the people, teaching them how to sit in a better way. We could do a lot of studies, sitting on a chair itself, you can go into Sukhasana, and various simple asanas are there. And by studies, we can show how the electrical activity is preserved, how the pranic flow is not disturbed. And so the problem here today is that we are made to sit for hours together. Sometimes it's 4 hours, 5 hours before we get up from our chair. And the modern concept is that we need movement breaks. We need movement breaks. When we say break, it's actually to relax. But today it's a break time we must do, even if we do break dance, it is okay. So we can say break time is the time for break dance. At least bring some activity to your body. So in olden days, people used to have break to rest. Today we need a break to become active. So sitting is one of the major causes for Medovaha Sroto Dushti, and it is called the new smoking because it creates a lot of problems, including heart disease, foggy brain, strained neck, even colon cancer, disc damage, weak abdominal muscles, tight hips, and all these things. So just to put we all know that smoking is a cause for lung cancer, but sitting for more than 6 hours a day can increase risk of lung cancer by more than 50%. So the advice generally given is stretch your legs or stand up every 30 to 40 minutes. Maybe you can just stand up in our office, do a little simple yoga stretches, keep a yoga mat also. And even if it is for a few minutes, you bring back the circulation of prana in your system. That is what yoga actually does. It makes sure that the prana moves smoothly without any hindrance. And as long as the prana is moving properly, that's what Ayurveda, Atharva Veda also says. Adharvani Rangirasi Devi Manushya Jauta Oshadhaya Prajayande Yathatvam Prana Jinnasi. Because a Vaidya is a prana abhisara. We have to work on the prana of the patient. We have to make sure the prana is circulating properly, because when the prana is there, medicine works. If there is no prana, the medicine cannot work. So the higher chance of rectal cancer, double the 44% higher chance of rectal cancer for people who sit continuously. And if you are obese, it's even more. So there are many such advices that are given, and a lot of metrics and calculations that have been discovered today. If you sit for more than 4 hours, you are increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease by 125%, and also it affects your mood. So the general advice is that in order to live longer, you should not sit no more than 3 hours a day, and not also smoke. So yes. Now a few more points before we quickly review some modern findings. So what is all your opinion about coconut oil? Anybody can give some inputs. Do you think coconut oil is good or bad? Has Ayurveda recommended the use of coconut oil internally or externally? Anybody? So Deepali says coconut oil is good. So why do you say so? Which Samhita has advised us to use coconut oil internally? Okay, Bhavana says it is both. But can you tell where is the Ayurvedic reference that coconut oil is good? Did Charaka advise you to use coconut oil internally, or Sushruta? Is coconut oil coming in the Taila Varga of Ayurveda? Anybody? Is it? Did Charaka put it in Taila Varga? Are you sure? In Sushruta, is it there? So generally, coconut oil is something which has become popular by actual use, and in some states, especially the southern states, Nalikera has been mentioned as a fruit, but the oil is not really so much discussed in the classical texts. Even in Vagbada, we do not find. So this has come much later. So that is one challenge. We don't find very direct references to the benefits of coconut oil in our classical texts. But it is being widely used, and in states like Kerala, where it is used a lot, people have also complained that this use of coconut oil is what is actually the reason that there is a lot of cardiovascular disease in Kerala. So some of you said that coconut oil is good. So why do you think it is good? Which oil, according to Ayurveda, is the best?
Delegates can respond by posting your answers in the chat box.
Tilataila, yes. So Tilataila is what Ayurveda considers as the best because it is Vata Haratvam. That is the main thing. See, when you are applying oil on the Ayurvedic medicines or oils, we are using it for Vata Shamana, not just for the skin. On the other hand, coconut oil has been more recommended for, the health of the skin and the hair. It is not that kind of Vata Shamana like Tilataila, because Tailam for Vata, Gridam for Pitta, and Mathu for Kapha. That is how, because Tilatailam is something which can address one of the dosha. That is why we gave more importance to Tilataila. But Sushruta gives us a clue. Phalodbhavani tailani yani uktani iha kanichit gunan karmacha vijnaya phalani eva vinardishet. So the taila that we get from the phalas, they have the properties same to that of the phalas. So coconut is described. Coconut oil is not described. So if we can look at the properties of coconut, then the same properties are there for the oil as per Sushruta. So on that basis, we can interpret the properties of coconut oil from Ayurveda, and it is supposed to be Hridyam also. So actually good for the heart. So from an Ayurvedic point of view, we cannot say that coconut can cause cardiovascular disease. So let me ask a question. Those of you who mentioned that coconut oil is good, why do you think it is good? In what way is it good? Even if it is not from the Ayurvedic point of view, you can explain. What do you think? I have given some clues here. When we look at oil, we have to look at whether saturated, unsaturated, short chain, medium chain, long chain, hydrogenation, trans fats. So many issues are there. When it comes to coconut oil, can anybody tell what type of fat it has, saturated or unsaturated? Does it have saturated or unsaturated fat? Anybody? It has got saturated fat. That is why it has been blamed to create problems, because it is saturated. But all saturated fats are not harmful. As Dr. Deepali mentioned, coconut oil has more medium chain and short chain fatty acids, and not long chain fatty acids. So when you have saturated fat, what we have to really ask is whether that fat is long chain, short chain, or medium chain. So obviously, if coconut oil has only short chain and medium chain fatty acids, what makes it different? What is the difference? What is the advantage of having short chain and medium chain fatty acid? Anybody? What is the difference? What makes coconut oil interesting is it has medium chain and short chain fatty acids, though it is saturated. So what does that mean? What advantage that is given to us? Yeah, no, it's not just it metabolizes easily. It is not stored as fat. It is actually used to release immediate energy. The body doesn't store long chain fatty acids. So that is the reason why if you take coconut oil, of course, in enough quantity, ati bhojana, and the thing is harmful, but so when you come to coconut oil, this is one thing we have to understand, that in spite of saturated acid is got, and it's a whole, uh, metabolism is different. The second point that we need to understand is this coconut oil has so many interesting compounds like lauric acid, monolaurin. Yes, coconut oil studies have shown that it actually increases HDL cholesterol, which is good for the body. But then there is a problem. The problem of coconut oil is that the way we are manufacturing and preparing it. And this is very important. All oils in olden days, they never used to store oil for later use. Today, because of the industry, we need to keep oil. Most of the oils, if you keep them, if you make it at home, if you make the oil, if you keep it for a few days, it becomes rancid. As smell comes and you cannot use it. So in order to prevent that, we are chemically treating all the oils that are distributed commercially. And it is this chemical treating of the coconut oil, the hydrogenation and other processes that we subject it to, even at the level of copra, to prevent it. When we want to mass manufacture it, we are subjecting it to so many harmful chemical processes. And that coconut oil has very different properties. Another problem, have you heard of trans fats? Do you know what is trans fats? Anybody? Yes. Actually, technically speaking, it is when liquid fats are turned into solid fat, then we call them as trans fats. And cooking is one process which creates trans fats. And the effect of this is that it increases the LDL, in the body. Now, what is interesting, there is a cardiologist from India, Manchanda. He's from Gangaram Hospital, and once I had also a discussion with him, I came to know that he published a paper on fats used in Indian cooking, ghee and coconut oil, and he has observed that traditional Indian cooking oils are better than refined coconut oil. Refined oil. So I'll just share that link. It's important to understand. In Indian cooking, we are using coconut oil and ghee. So traditional Indian cooking oils, ghee, coconut, and mustard oil are healthier, even healthier than refined or olive oils. Why? Because in Indian cooking, one of our problems is deep frying. And for deep frying, actually ghee or coconut oil are much better because they are more heat resistant. Refined oils degrade easily and should never be used for frying. On the contrary, oils high in saturated fats like ghee and coconut oil can be used for Indian cooking as they are comparatively stable during drying. This does not mean that we should start using coconut oil and eat a lot of fried foods. A big problem is that Indian foods like udad vada and all that, in traditional days, they were used only during festival days, only once in a while. But today it has become part of our daily diet. But if you want to fry, then it is better to use coconut oil or ghee. Though regular use of fried items are not good, but using modern type of refined oils for frying is actually more harmful. So this has been found by a modern cardiologist, and he was telling why traditional diet practices in this way are healthy. Now, when it comes to ghee is also a big problem because many people say that it is because of the intake of ghee that cholesterol is happening. So I told you right from the outset that in Ayurveda we have not linked Medova Sroto Dushti directly to the use of oils or fats, but only to the use of Sleshmalahara, Ati Madhura, Sleshmalahara, and lack of Vyayama. That is, according to Ayurveda, the whole etiological basis for the development of Medova Sroto Dushti. So we have never restricted the use of snehana or oils even when Medo Dushti is there when treating these patients, because Snehasaroyam Purusha, good oil should always be made available in the diet. So our advice is not to use any chemically treated oil. If you want to use oil, make it fresh, make very little. In olden days, every home they had this oil making thing. They used to make fresh oil, use it, and when it goes bad, it's not used anymore. Then there will be no harm from any of these oils if we can use fresh oil. And ghee also, I know I have personally observed cases, and I've also seen many other doctors who have documented and presented that in many patients who have dyslipidemia, after giving snehapana and virechana, during snehapana there is an increase in the cholesterol, but after that whole snehapana and shodhana procedure and samsarjana karma, we can find that their lipid levels are dramatically normalizing. So just we cannot say that use of ghee and our medicines are always leading to increase in cholesterol or dyslipidemia. And clearly Ayurveda tells us what is it that makes the use of ghee safe. Pakweshu dosheshu amritam. Ayurveda has told very clearly how to use ghee safely. After pachana only we have to use ghee. Pakweshu dosheshu amritam tad vishobhama manyatha. If there is ama in the system, and this is the advice for oil also. When you are using oil, there should not be ama in the system, and there should not be Agni should also be strong. So I don't know if you have noticed, even for external application of oil, this is a very, very important indication. This is being ignored today. Ata jadanna panecho marudagnai sugandhivi. When should you apply oil in the body? When you get hunger, just when you are beginning to get hunger, only at that time you must apply oil, even on your external application. You should not apply oil when there is ama or your Agni is weak. Even external application is prohibited. And this is a big problem today because of the spas and all these massage centers. These basic principles of Ayurveda has been ignored. You are applying oil without looking at ama. Even external application of oil when there is ama is vishopamam. Pakweshu dosheshu amritam. So when you want to apply oil, you must first make sure there is malashodhana, there is agni deepana, there is srota shuddhi, and there is no ama in the system. Then when you use oil, snehasaro, it will contribute to the core system of your body. Otherwise, it becomes vishopama. So I'm not going into more discussion because of lack of time. And now we will look at some modern findings and try to correlate in the remaining part of our discussion. Let us look at fat in diet. So fatty acids differ, what we just discussed now. Fatty acids differ from one another in two ways, one in chain length and the other in the degree of saturation. This is very helpful to know, even as Ayurveda clinicians, because using this, we can to a great extent explain many things that have been discussed in our samhitas. So with respect to degree of saturation, fatty acids can be classified as saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. So out of this, the saturated fats have been told to be the biggest culprits, and even ghee has saturated fats. That is why even ghee has been. So that was the earlier, study and understanding. But as we understood, we have to consider both saturation as well as the chain. So these saturated fats are found in a lot of meat, poultry, dairy products, eggs, coconut, palm and palm kernel oils, and high intake of saturated fats is associated with the risk of coronary artery disease. But recent findings are saying that egg is not a problem. That even if you eat egg regularly, it is not found to be associated with coronary artery disease or cardiovascular disease. So more and more this idea is coming up that dyslipidemia or Medovasrotodushti is not just due to the intake of oil, but it is more due to unwise way of dietary practices. Now, monounsaturated fats, which lack one pair of hydrogen atoms and on their carbon chain, and these are, canola, nut, olive oils. These are monounsaturated, and because of that, olive oil has become so, popular worldwide. And there is also some commerce involved. People wanted to discourage many of these tropical oils and replace coconut oil. So coconut oil has suffered by bad propaganda. And so all of these things are not completely based on science alone. They are also based on commerce. So they are always liquid at room temperature. Coconut oil becomes solid when it gets cold. So many people have pointed out this is what happens when it goes inside. Also, it causes blockages, but which is not true. So mostly such kind of oils have generally been considered to be lower risk of coronary artery disease. But as I said, olive oil is not good when you cook it. So even if you are using olive oil, if you are heating it, then it's not so healthy. You should use olive oil more fresh. So you can see in the West, they usually use it as a dressing, or they use it at the end of cooking. Whereas Indian cooking is more related to, frying the oil. And then olive oil is not a good choice. As our cardiologist Manchanda has pointed out, coconut oil or ghee is better when you are actually cooking. So we have the ghee roast, coconut oil for dosa and all that. Definitely with olive oil, it will not be good. So what the point I wanted to make is that, we have some concepts in Ayurveda, and there's a lot of modern information coming. Why should, as Ayurveda people, we should also know this? Because if we want to talk to our patients and also advise them properly, they are coming with all this knowledge in their mind. They will ask us, doctor, is this not saturated fat? Is this not coconut oil? So if you don't know anything about this, you won't be able to talk to them. We cannot keep telling Sneha Saroyam. So we have to also understand this modern information, then grasp it from an Ayurvedic understanding, and then we will have to counsel our patients so that they're able to take the proper decisions. So we cannot afford to be ignorant about these concepts. So if you can explain to them, olive oil is, of course, is good, but you should never cook it. Whereas coconut oil has medium chain, short chain, so it's not harmful. But coconut oil, even if you cook it, it's not as harmful as olive oil. But coconut oil, never buy something which is chemically treated. Try to make it fresh. So these are the messages that we have to actually give to our patients and the general public, so that they can take more informed and decisions and make more healthy choices in their life. So polyunsaturated fatty acids lacking 2 or more pairs of hydrogen atoms, safflower, sunflower, sesame, corn, and soybean oil are unsaturated, polyunsaturated fats, which are also liquid at room temperature, and are not considered as harmful as saturated fats. And if you look at this, sesame oil actually comes here in polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so you can also say that Ayurveda never recommended coconut oil as the best oil. We have recommended actually this tilatailam, kusumba tailam, safflower oil is also discussed in Ayurveda. No, of course, soybean oil is not there. But that does not mean that coconut oil is bad for all the reasons that we discussed. So we need to look at it very critically and give the right information, how the oil is used, how the oil is processed, whether it's cooked or uncooked. All these things matter. And then, of course, trans fatty acids, which are naturally occurring and seen in some dairy products and meat, but mostly it is produced by a process called hydrogenation. And this is why coconut oil, commercial oil, becomes so harmful, because they are, even when you buy it from the market, it is already going through this process called hydrogenation. So hydrogenation means we are treating fats and oil with hydrogen gas in the presence of a catalyst, resulting in the selective addition of hydrogen to the carbon to carbon double bonds, so that this rancidity will not happen, that oil will not spoil, so that they can sell. So this is very important. Many products that we are seeing in the market have been created looking at only how you can market them, not looking at what their effect on health is. So we should never encourage the use of hydrogenated oil, even if that oil by itself is good, like coconut oil, when it is hydrogenated. So all these, I'm not telling any brands or names, but all the oils which you get in the market and which don't spoil if you keep for a long time, you may think it is good, but actually it is bad. If an oil is getting spoiled after a few days, it is fresh when you got it, then it means they have not chemically treated it. Otherwise, whatever they say, virgin oil, that oil, you are keeping it at home for months and still it is not spoiling, it means it has been chemically treated and then it is harmful. So this is very important to know. So other thing is that this short, medium and long chain fatty acids, little attention is focused on the fact that saturated fatty acids are not a single family of fats, but comprise the C subgroups: short chain, medium chain and long chain. So the medium chain free fatty acids and monoglycerides are directly absorbed from the small intestine, and they do not undergo degradation or re-esterification processes. They are directly used in the body to produce energy. And that is why we can use it in infant formulas, nutritional drinks for athletes, and intravenous lipid infusions. So actually, coconut oil is also coconut milk, all these things are very good infant foods also, because they give very quick energy. Whereas the other type of fat actually gets stored. They are stored for use as energy in the future. And that is how this whole excessive accumulation happens. So now I'd like to come to the last part of our discussion. We discussed about, so let me just summarize what all we discussed. That according to Ayurveda, Medo Vaha Sroto Dushti is linked to both diet and physical activity. But when you look at diet, Ayurveda is not emphasizing the fact that Medo Vaha Sroto Dushti is caused by intake of a lot of oil, whereas Ayurveda says good oil like ghridam, tatra dhi smriti medhagni kankshinam shasyate ghridam. Ghridam is something which we have told should be used. Snigdhamasniyat, ushnamasniyat. Every day we are supposed to take some ghee. And there is a lot of benefit from using such fats. And this is what I think, as an Ayurveda clinician and Ayurveda student, I have understood, is that we must educate the public about the proper use of fats. Fats are needed in our body. Our body is, everything in the body is lipophilic or hydrophilic, water and fat. Our entire fluid system is a mixture of oil and fat. It's like oil and fat mixed together. Without fat, so many things cannot happen inside our system. Our brain is full of fat. Marrow is full of fat. So we actually need fat nutrition. So this whole discussion of dyslipidemia and all those things, we should make sure that we don't make fat our enemy. We should not forget the Ayurvedic dictum that Sneha Saroyam Purusha, and we should talk about how we can nourish that healthy fat. So it is very important when Ayurveda tells that it's Sleshmala Ahara and Adhyashana and Avyayama, Divasupna. These are all the factors that are really at the root cause of Medo Vaha Sroto Dushti. And many of the oils and other things, because of the modern method of industry and commercialization and chemical processing, and also the modern methods of fast food cooking, that is actually what makes oils unhealthy. Otherwise, so we must actually learn how to use oils in a better way. So this is the overall summary of what we discussed. Now let us look at what is the fat in our human body. So the main types of fat cells, you can classify them into three: white fat cell, brown and beige cells. So they can be stored. So this is very interesting for us to know about what is good fat and bad fat. And this discussion will enable us to understand why Ayurveda has told that we are Snehasara Purushas. They can be stored as essential subcutaneous or visceral fat. There is something called as essential fat, without which our body cannot function normally. So each type of fat serves a different role. A lot of these fats promote healthy metabolism and hormone levels, while others contribute to life-threatening diseases. So the life-threatening diseases that come from Medova Srotodushti, a type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and cancer. So white fat is made up of large white cells. These are what you see under your skin and around the organs in the belly, arms, buttocks, and thighs. So these fat cells are the body's way of storing energy for later use. So this type of fat is very essential for the function of many hormones like estrogen, leptin. This is something which stimulates hunger, then insulin, cortisol, growth hormone. So here again we get a clue why we say snehasaro impurusha, because without this fat, many of the normal functions of our body cannot happen. So it's only when white fat becomes excess that it is harmful. And according to American Council, men who are non-athletes should have a total body fat percentage 14 to 24%, and women who are non-athletes should be 21 to 31%. So this is quite a good amount considering all the other components our body has. We need this critical mass, around 25%, 25 to 30%, give or take from between the two genders. We need 25% of our body to be made up of fat. So fat is not our enemy. But higher than this, only it creates a risk for so many of these diseases. But how many of you have heard of brown fat? Can you tell me? Anybody has heard of brown fat? Anybody has heard of brown fat? I don't see any response. Yeah, I can see some people have responded. No, okay. So brown fat is very interesting to know, because this may be, we can think also of whether some Ayurvedic interventions are increasing. Sorry, this is beige fat. I'm talking about brown fat. It is primarily found in babies. Adults may have a little of this brown fat, especially in the neck and shoulders. And these types of fat burn fatty acids to keep you warm. So researchers are interested to see if you can increase brown fat in our body, our metabolism will increase. And especially in cold countries, people with more brown fat will be able to survive the cold faster, because the metabolism will increase in response to the cold. The brown fat will make the fatty acids to burn more, and then your heat will increase and you can survive from the cold. So now people are trying to see how can we activate brown fat so that obesity can be prevented. So this is very interesting. Obesity can be prevented or managed not just by reducing fat, but by just changing the type of fat your body is dealing with. And then there is something called as beige fat. Have you heard of this? Anybody who has heard of beige fat or bright fat? This is also a new area of understanding. So these fat cells function somewhere between brown and white fat cells, and beige cells can also help burn fat rather than store it. So certain hormones and enzymes released when you're stressed, cold, or even when you exercise can help convert white fat into beige fat. So this is extremely important. When you say sneha saroyam purusha, it means that if you have I would like to reinterpret it by saying that if you have the right kind of fat in your system, then it is your saratva, it is going to support you. So certain metabolic changes, certain biochemical changes in your body, exposure to cold or exercise, so your white fat can be converted to beige fat. And this is a very interesting way to convert your existing fat into something which is good, and then you don't have the problems of obesity. So brown fat and beige fat is something we must really look into and explore possibilities of research, and find what happens when we give some Ayurvedic treatments, panchakarma or other procedures. So then we come to another kind of fat, which is called essential fat. Has anybody heard of essential fat? Have you heard of this term, essential fat? No, because fat has got such a bad reputation. When we think of fat, we think of it as something which we are using for our luxury and for enjoyment of fried food. There's something called as essential fat. Anybody heard of essential fat? Yeah, some of you have. Some of you have. That's good to know. So essential fat is something which we have to maintain at a certain percent. Especially women need more of this essential fat, 10 to 13% of their body composition, and men require at least 2 to 5%. And essential fat is that which you see in the brain, bone marrow, nerves, and membranes that protect your organs. And essential fat plays a major role in hormone regulation, including hormones that control fertility, vitamin absorption, and temperature regulation. So this is the types of fat. So we looked at how fats come from outside: saturated, unsaturated, and poly and mono unsaturated, and then the chain. When you come to the body, we have white fat, brown fat, beige fat, and then essential fat. And this understanding is very critical. I think with this understanding, we would be able to explain a lot of things from an Ayurvedic perspective, and we can give better education to the common man. And now we look at where does the body store the fat inside. So subcutaneous fat refers to the fat stored under the skin. It is actually a combination of brown, beige, and white fat cells. And we already know that one of the ways to make our body healthy is to convert white fat to beige fat. So majority of a body fat is subcutaneous. It's a fat that you can squeeze or pinch on your arms, belly, thighs, and buttocks. So fitness professionals use calipers to measure subcutaneous fat, and then they infer body fat. See, body fat percentage is very difficult to measure directly. You need MRI or scans to do that. So current methods to estimate body fat are indirect. We'll have a look at some methods. So a certain amount of subcutaneous fat is normal and healthy. But even if you put too much of subcutaneous fat, it can be harmful. But compared to visceral fat, subcutaneous fat is not as harmful, and your body can, accommodate a lot. But the most dangerous type of fat when it comes to what is inside. So we are looking at, a spectrum of understanding of fat in terms of what goes inside. Saturated fat is generally bad, but if it is medium or short chain, it's okay. Mono unsaturated is good, but if you cook it, then it becomes bad. So that is when you're looking at the source of the fat. Then inside the body, brown and beige fat are better than white fat. And where it is deposited also is very important. Visceral fat is the worst. So it is the white fat that is stored in your abdomen around all your major organs. And this is otherwise called as belly fat, because this is what typically creates central obesity. So high visceral fat levels can increase your risk for diabetes, heart disease, stroke, artery disease, as well as some cancers. So our whole fight is against the development of visceral fat or belly fat. And if that can be prevented, then intake of fats can actually support your system, because fat is very, very important for temperature regulation, balanced hormone levels, better reproductive health, proper vitamin storage, good neurological function, healthy metabolism, as well as balanced sugar. And high fat causes all these conditions. This slide is a bit repetitive. Yeah, to prevent visceral fat, we are coming into it. To prevent visceral fat, what we need is, exercise, and the intake. Because visceral fat develops because of sedentary life habits, and also when your calorie intake exceeds your calorie burning that you do in the body. So you have to always eat food, because body requires nutrition calories only depending on your activity. So your diet should be according to the lifestyle. This is what Ayurveda says. So if you look at Vagbada's Ashtanga Hridayam, first he mentions Ayushkamiyam, Ragadi Rogan, the mind. Mindset is the most important thing. So according to the mindset, you will have a lifestyle. So next is lifestyle. Dinacharya, Ritucharya, Roganutpadanam, lifestyle. After lifestyle, he has mentioned diet. So that sequence is very important. Today, we are not eating according to our lifestyle. That is the biggest problem. If you eat according to your lifestyle, then you will not develop any of these problems. So which means if you are sedentary, your eating should be very different. Your calories should be less. If you are physically very active, your calories can be high. And that is why in India, we have had this big epidemic of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, because most of our traditional diets are for a very physically active lifestyle. India, we use a lot of sweets. In Kerala, we use, a lot of carbohydrates, because there are people who are, I still know in my young days, when these people who are doing manual work, they take a lot of these carbohydrate rich food because they are physically so active working in the sun. But suddenly we have come indoors, we are sitting in chairs, but our diet has not changed. And this is creating a big epidemic of, many diseases. I don't know how many of you know that, Indian coronary arteries are narrower than European coronary arteries. Anybody heard of this? Anybody heard of this? Probably because we were not using that much fat, thick fat like cheese. So their coronary arteries adapted. So Indians are at higher risk for coronary artery blockages, because suddenly we had only light cheese like paneer and all that. Being in a hot climate, we don't need that much of fat. But suddenly we have changed our diet to pizzas and pastas and cheese rich food. And suddenly, so we are getting this epidemic. So according to lifestyle, according to the dinacharya, rutucharya, our diet, if we change, a lot of these things can be controlled. Now, how do we measure body fat? Skin fold measurements. That is one method. But with this, you look at subcutaneous fat and then you make some calculations and then infer how much of visceral fat we have. Another method is called the Bodpod method, measuring body fat. You use body weight and volume, look at their ratios, and then using a formula, you give a breakup of all the different types of fat in your body. This, I think, should become a very good tool in the future. Ayurveda clinicians can also use this and interpret it according to our concept of Medas. What is very interesting is this new method of bioelectrical impedance. Have anybody heard of this bioelectrical impedance? Anybody who has measured your own body fat using this? I'm using a device every day to check my fat, and so in spite of having reduced so much kilos, my visceral fat is still high. So now I am on a, but many things changed even by reducing 20 kilos, 19 to 20 kilos. Homocysteine, this is a marker for endothelial dysfunction. High sensitivity CRP, I had very high levels of these markers. Just a second. And by weight reduction, it has come down. But if you don't measure visceral fat, you will not know whether your weight reduction program is good enough or how much weight you have to reduce. There is no point if you keep reducing your weight and all your subcutaneous fat is going, your muscle mass is reducing. So it's very helpful if you can make a proportion. According to Ayurveda also, too much of reduction in Mamsa Dhatu will again lead to a disproportion between Mamsa Dhatu and Medo Dhatu. So weight reduction alone cannot be considered. You must look at the protein mass. We must look at bone health also, bone density. So some of these modern Yes, scanning is a good method, but it's very expensive and not so easy to do on a daily basis. So anybody heard of bioelectrical impedance method, where electrical current is passed through your legs, and then the body measures the lean versus fatty mass in our body, and then gives you a breakup of what is the water content, what is the visceral fat, what is the overall fat, how much muscle is there, what is your metabolic rate, all these things. So this gives you a good idea of the proportion. What I have found is that this metrics that we are provided with gives you a clear three dhatus they are also looking at. They are looking at mamsa, meda, and asthidhatu. They give you your bone mass, they give you your muscle mass, and they give you your fat. So is that not a fascinating finding? They are not telling the link, but according to Ayurveda, mamsa, meda, and asti are related one after the other. They present this sequence in the dhatu upaga parampara. And even today, when they are not looking at just fat alone, they are looking at fat versus muscle versus the bone. So bioelectrical impedance weighing machines are also available now, where you connect it to an app, but you need really highly sensitive weighing scales. The really good ones are very expensive. You actually stand on them. It's a big machine. It may not be affordable for individuals, but there are also some individual weighing scales which you have to very carefully select. The good ones are very expensive. They may come to around 13,000 or so, but if you go for the very professional ones, they're still very more expensive. And then you connect it to the app either on a computer and big machines, or with your phone you can get a breakup. And this is the best way. So you are not just focusing on reducing weight, but bringing back what in an Ayurvedic terms would be dhatu samyam. Because in Ayurveda it is dhatu samyam. It is not just reduction of waste. Dhatu samya kriya chokta tantrasya prayojanam. So you cannot reduce weight and then cause dhatu vaishamyam. So checking mamsa, medo, asti dhatus and all other dhatus continuously is really very, very important. And body mass index, as I told you, it is a good metric, but what is your opinion? My opinion is that body mass index alone is not a good predictor of healthy weight. Anybody has any suggestions or opinions? Why should we be a little bit suspicious about BMI? So you know about this BMI values. I'm not going into it. Yeah, I think it is Prakriti, because Kapha Prakriti people, we need to redefine the BMI scale. And I know a lot of people have tried to work on this as PG theses or research works, but we still not have arrived at a consensus. I would not dismiss the BMI metric completely, but we need to reinterpret it from an Ayurvedic perspective. A Vata person may always find himself on the lower side of the BMI and a Kapha person on the higher side. So we need to create different guidelines and ranges to accommodate the Prakriti variations, age variations, and all those things. So that needs to be done. So now comes to this question: how can we prevent the fat increase? A common assumption is that a high fat diet is what causes a person to have too much body fat. This is only partially true. While fat is higher in calories than carbohydrates or protein, people need a certain amount of dietary fat for good health. But what is really the cause of this bad fat, especially visceral fat, is refined processed foods that are high in carbohydrates and low in fiber. This is what is really causing. This is what I think we can interpret the Shleshmala Ahara, which makes the rasa madhuratara. That is low fiber, like bread and sandwich, bread sandwich with jam. Now this is low fiber, high carbohydrate food. Many of the other processed food that we are commonly eating, the bakery items, all these are high in carbohydrates and low in fiber. And then refined sugars and processed food. And this is what actually causes visceral fat, which is more dangerous as a predictor of disease than subcutaneous fat. So it is not, modern medicine has also come to the understanding that it is not actually high fat food that causes these problems, but it's this type of food. And this, I think, is a very good correlate with our idea which we saw, Shleshmal Ahara Sevana. And next thing is high calorie. Calories consumed that aren't needed by the body. This is what we call as adhyashana or amitashanam. That is taking more calories than the body needs. So if you can keep your calories less, this is why I was mentioning about lifestyle dependent diet. So if you change your diet high in protein, complex carbohydrates, and more fiber, which means just adding more vegetables, more fruits, nuts, and these things, if you bring into your diet, the whole complexion changes. And then if you support it with exercise, especially strength training, because if you can increase your muscle mass, the muscle will demand more energy, and so your basal metabolic rate will increase. And this, I think, in Ayurveda we can consider is at stabilizing Agni. Your basal metabolic rate, if you increase it, this also with many machines we can measure today. If your basal metabolic rate is very low, then whatever diet and other things you do, so many of these factors will be brought together for you to have a very good healthy fat profile in our system. So I think we will conclude here. Yeah, the exercises, strength training, you can, walking is very good for cardiovascular health, but strength training, so you need a combination of walking, some high intensity exercises like biking or swimming, and then also the stretching. Strength training is what you do in a gym, but again this has to be very customized. Our goal should not just to be body shaping or making suddenly developing too many muscles. It should not just be for appearance, it should be actually for the health. So that is what we call a strength training and building lean muscle mass. So a combination of walking, biking, and then this kind of strength training is enough if you do at least thrice in a week, biking at least 5 times in a week, and a little bit of walking every day. This combination will completely change the way. And Ayurvedic principles are very, very relevant there. Ardha Shaktya Nishevyastu, Balibhi Snigdha Bhojibi. It has to be very personalized. You should do only to half your strength. And Balibhi, Snigdha Bhojibi, you must take Snigdha Bhojana. So Ayurveda has not told that you must go on a fat-free diet when you do exercise. Snigdha Bhojana has been, recommended. So good fat, as we found out now. With that, if you do that, it will be very helpful. So it's healthy to have some body fat, but not all fat is created equal. Visceral fat is a type of fat, body fat, that's stored within the abdominal cavity, and this is the most dangerous. Liver, stomach, intestines, it can also build up in the arteries. So fatty liver, all that comes that. Because visceral fat is called active fat. So it's also important to note that if you have some belly fat, it's not necessarily visceral fat. Belly fat can also be subcutaneous fat. So I have done this checking, and that is why when you look at weight, there are many ways you can measure the inches in your stomach. And my observations, I have found a lot of people now, when I look at these patients and try to advise them diet and life, I try to use some modern measures also. So if I find that their visceral fat is not so high, then I don't need to really ask them to do too much of vigorous exercise. So just because they have a little bulging belly doesn't mean that it's always visceral fat. So we must distinguish between visceral fat and belly fat. So if the belly fat is subcutaneous fat, then it's not so harmful. But in some people, when you do this bioelectrical impedance, you can see dangerously high levels of visceral fat. So these are some ideas and discussions and suggestions. I think we will stop here. And if there are a few questions, we can quickly address that. This can go on and on, but I hope I was able to throw some stimulating ideas on how we can look at what is discussed in the classical texts and how we can try to make sense of what modern science is also, discussing and discovering. Because when we put these two things together and create a proper perspective, we'll be in a better position to educate ourselves and the general public on how to use all this Ayurvedic knowledge to, address some of the pressing problems of our days, obesity, dyslipidemia, and all the other diseases associated with this. So let me stop here. Are there any questions? Namaste.
Thank you, sir, for such an amazing session. The session revealed us about your immense passion towards Ayurveda, that you have dived deeper into the concept, elaborating us each and every minute details regarding various nehas. It reminded us of Kashyapa's quotation that Ahara itself is Mahabhaishajya. Not just what you put on your body is important, but it's equally important to analyze what you put inside your body and how it's being utilized by our body. Now, it's time to move ahead into question and answer session, sir. Delegates, kindly post your questions in the chat box. Sir, we have one question here, sir. Shall I read it out, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you throw light on Kusumba Taila? It is told Tridoshakar.
Yes, safflower oil, even according to modern findings, in small quantities, it is said to be okay. But in large quantities, it is harmful for people with diabetes, uh, and it can also prevent blood clotting, so it can increase bleeding. So even modern findings don't support to very excess use of safflower oil. So Tridoshakaratvam, bleeding because of increasing pitta, all these problems are there. So it is also only recommended for moderate use as per current findings also.
Thank you, sir. Delegates, any other questions?
Perhaps many things were answered in between discussions.
Yes, sir. I request participants who are watching in YouTube also to raise questions.
I guess, oh, there's something.
Sir, one more question, sir. Is rice bran oil good for cooking?
And now this has become a very, see, it's not mentioned in Ayurveda. From what I have understood, that it is not good, again, just like the Kusumba Thailam, not good in large quantities. Especially, it is supposed to cause, now my understanding, all these modern oils I have not studied. Rice bran oil I looked at because I was also looking for healthier options for cooking oil. And what I've understood is that it can cause some abdominal discomfort, Koštavadam especially, if you use it in excess. In small quantities it is useful, but I wouldn't put it as a very healthy oil. It generally can cause in some people loose bowels, abdominal discomfort, flatulence and all that. But little quantities may be used, but certainly I wouldn't recommend it as a good choice. Olive oil, if you're not cooking, then olive oil is fine. Good coconut oil, if you can make, I would still say that is one of the best choices. Sesame oil, people who are using it, it is fine. But coconut oil seems to be very good for us in India if we are able to make it fresh. We don't need to go for rice bran oil, is my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Sir, next question is how to reduce visceral fat.
Yes, I already mentioned visceral fat to reduce is difficult. To prevent is little easier because if you can avoid. So first is you avoid all those kind of fats. I just mentioned now, no, the bakery foods rich in this carbohydrates and what we just pointed out now, refined processed foods with less fiber. Add more fiber to your diet. If you're finding it very difficult, you can also get fiber supplements, but as much as possible, it is better to get from your own diet. So if you can increase your fiber intake, again, you have to be a little careful when you use too much of fiber because it can cause flatulence and other things. So you have to be careful with your choice, but increase your fiber intake and reduce refined sugars and carbohydrates like polished rice. These things should be avoided, and then avoid bakery items completely. This is from the preventive part. Then to actually burn visceral fat, you need high intensity exercises. If when you are doing your activity, one way, I am using some of the wearables and I'm checking every day whether my exercise is sufficient, how intensely you do it. See, when you're doing an exercise, we don't know. When we use these wearables, we are able to know whether our exercise is warm up or whether it is fat burn or whether it is cardio. So the intensity of the exercise we can measure with the help of some of these variables. So if you keep your exercise at such a level that it is fat burn, simply measuring steps is not enough. I have experimented all this. You may be walking leisurely. When you say brisk walk, means it should be like you are walking in a hurry to actually reach somewhere within a particular period of time. If you're walking leisurely, it also has benefit, but it will be just very light exercise. And with light exercise, even achieving 10,000 steps a day will not enable you to burn your visceral fat. You have to really make it intense. So keeping your your activity at a level of fat burn, and in between having some cardio level exercise also, only that will actually burn your visceral fat. So that kind of high intensity exercises, and then there are some abdominal exercises itself which make use of your abdominal muscles, strengthening your shaping your abs. That is a little intense. Slowly you can also introduce that. So by a combination of all these things, it is possible to reduce your visceral fat. Another important thing which I didn't mention is sleep is extremely somebody asked me also in between, naturopathic doctors recommending complete oil-free diet. As I told you right from the beginning, that's why I mentioned Sneha Saroyam Purushaha. This is not acceptable to Ayurveda or even modern medicine. Modern science also recommends the use of healthy fats. So a completely oil-free diet, I don't think is from an Ayurvedic perspective correct. Snigdhamashniya, Adbalivi Snigdhabhojivi, wherever you see that, you can see that fat is not to be removed. Ghee, everything we have recommended. But it should be good fat. That is the key thing. If you are using oil, use fresh oil.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is whether drinking green tea is favorable to obese person to reduce weight. If yes, then how long it should be continued or it should be taken continuously?
Yeah, so green tea, green tea is very ruksha, stringent. So while there it is definitely has some beneficial antioxidants and all that, if you overuse it, it is harmful. It can be harmful for your bone health. It can make your body extremely ruksha. So in my opinion, with tea, what I have looked at the experiment, why in India we are adding milk to tea. So with some Ayurvedic logic, we can use all this in a better way. In my opinion, if you are taking green tea, you should take it only after food. Only in the Shleshma Kalas we must use it. Just like smoking, we have told some Kalas are there for Dhumapana. When Shleshma Utklesha is happening, when you do smoking, it won't harm your system. If you do it on an empty stomach, then green tea can also be harmful. This is something which modern nutrition cannot understand because it is very ruksha. Even black tea is harmful if you take it that way. So if after eating a heavy meal, when there is utklesha or shleshma in your system, if you are sipping some green tea, it will be very, very beneficial. That if you take for a long time also, it will not cause a problem. Otherwise, any green tea, if you take continuously, you can see signs of vata vriddhi and rukshada in your system will come in. So this is the key thing. And on the other hand, if you are taking tea on an empty stomach, then adding milk is good. Because why we are adding milk in India is, I think that Ayurvedic wisdom is there in the people. But milk tea you should never take when there is Shleshma Utklesha. So, according to Ayurveda, Kala Bhojanam, when you use it, at what context? Hitashi Syat, Mitashi Syat, Kala Bhoji. So, if we do that, that is, I think we must learn how to use this in the correct way. It's not just green tea, and then drinking a lot of green tea will not be helpful. I hope it is advised. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, next question is ketogenic diet good for health?
Yeah, it is yes and no. There have been some benefits, but a lot of people are also harmed. Uh, See, in Ayurveda, we have an approach which is very customized. So the problem with ketogenic diet is that it has been made, generalized for everybody, and that kind of diet has been. You can read about it also. The results are mixed. We cannot deny that people have been benefited out of it, but the danger is that if you generalize it and if you don't know whether it is suitable for you, then it can also be harmful.
Sir, our next question is, which is the best drug to dissolve excessive fat?
That is why I would like to repeat what Ayurvedic text said, Nahi sthulasya bheshajam. In Ayurveda, we have a whole list of medicines which are said to be medoharam, right from food like takram. Takra is very good to remove visceral fat. I have seen people, you are taking just Ashtachurnam regularly, their liver fat percentage is coming down. So many Ruksha medicines are there in Ayurveda. We cannot say which is the best, again, according to situation. In diet, the practice of using pepper along with, when you make egg, we usually put pepper also in there. Pepper is very good to reduce fat. Haritaki is very good to reduce, fat from your system. So by Pachana and Pachana Lekhana medicines are there in Ayurveda which have been mentioned. Asana is very good. So I will not say that there is just one. There are many which we have to choose according to the context. Even Triphala can reduce fat in your system because of the presence of Haritagi. Haritagi is Medohara. Gugulu is Medohara. But when they removed certain compounds from Gugulu like Gugulusterone and tried to work, it didn't produce dramatic results. So all this in Ayurveda, that is why any medicine you take according to the Prakriti constitution, what is good for one person may be not the best for another person. So for a diabetes related, disease pathway, asana has been considered to be the best. Sterocarpus marsupium. Asana is very good. For cardiovascular related, dyslipidemia, Gugulu is actually found to be good. Even Arjuna, if you add with Gugulu, Arjuna is also said to have some lipid stabilizing, effects. So I think we have to look at the specific type of pathogenesis, Ayurvedic dosha dhatu vikalpa. That is why in Ayurveda we have not mentioned any particular thing as just one. And iron is also very good. You can see Ayaskriti, many iron combinations have been mentioned for controlling fat also. So that is all very context specific. So for each condition, we have to choose the specific medication.
Thank you, sir. Sir, next question is, what is your opinion on avocado fat?
Yeah, I have been taking it. In fact, today I had avocado fruit. I'm experimenting on it, and from what I've understood, it's good. See, in Ayurveda, we cannot just stick to only the fruits and vegetables mentioned in our texts. Our acharyas also kept adding new things. Some things, good things may come from any part of the world. What did Sushruta say? नदीषु शैलेषु सरस्सु चापि वन्येषु अरण्येषु तथाश्रमेषु सर्वत्र सर्वा परिमार्गितव्या सर्वत्र भूमिर्हि वसूनि सते. So from anywhere good things come, we can take. From my understanding, studies, and my own use, I found that butterfruit, or as we call avocado, is a good option for controlling and regulating fat, and I'm using it now. Similarly, manuka honey. In Ayurveda, we have not described all types of honey. New Zealand, they have this special type of honey. If it is good, we can accept it. So the best way is that we start using it. Most of the things what I have told now have come from my understanding has come from what I have been trying on myself. I've tried olive oil, I've tried coconut oil, and I learned that olive oil should not be cooked while coconut oil can be cooked. So the best way to take a final decision about all this is by using it yourself. So in my opinion, avocado is good.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is, if Purana Guglu or Navaga Guglu is advised, how long it can be advised to the obese patients?
You see, all these obesity medicines, you can see they are Lekhana and Chedana type of medicines. So we have to be very careful when we use it in the long term, because Ati Lekhana and Ati Chedana can damage and harm your system. But Guglu is also a Rasayana. So if you want to give Guglu on a long-term basis, you must give it as per Rasayana Vithi. Then it will not be harmful. Otherwise, when you find signs of proper Lekhana has happened, we must stop it. All our medicines, even Kashaya, if you keep giving for a long time, these are very Ruksha. And beyond a limit, if you keep giving it, it will cause Ati Yoga. So the cutoff point for Ati Yoga may be different in different patients. I have seen this happening in skin diseases when I give little Lankhana and Rukshana, then Lankhana, we do little bit more, Vata Goba happens, then we have to give Snehana. So it is always a balancing. That is why they have mentioned about the Vidhobakramaniyam. So long-term use of these medicines, I cannot advise, but if you ask me a specific timing, how can we say that? It depends on the individual. If it's a Kapha person with excess medas, maybe you can give it for a longer time. So what is actually needed is you have to review the patient periodically and then look for signs of Ati Yoga. And if you're seeing that you have reached that point, you can stop it. But as a Rasayana, like as it has been mentioned for Pipali, Nadam Atyubayunji, the Rasayana Vidhim Vina. These kind of substances which have Lekhana and scraping action, never use it long term unless you're using it as Rasayana.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is alternative use of different oil for cooking is recommended for healthy persons?
Yeah, according to Ayurveda, if you can choose oil according to your requirement, it is not according to our whim and fancy, right? So depending on the desha that you are living, depending on your dosha prakriti, depending on the changing of seasons, like mustard oil is good in winter, coconut oil may be good in summer. In that way you can change it. But just because I thought today I will put a toss or I will take lots today whether it's going to be coconut oil or that, it doesn't help. So if you can change it according to the requirement. Definitely yes. Ayurveda doesn't recommend, only certain things are mentioned. Nityopayogi aharas are there, which you can use regularly. The rest of it should be according to season, according to desha, according to the avastha of your body.
Thank you, sir. Sir, our next question is, use of honey, whether it would be helpful for diabetic patients?
Yeah, there are many studies, and recently I have also, we just wrote a paper on honey, and I will just tell some differences. So honey is actually made up of sugars which include about 40% fructose and 30% glucose, and less than 5% is made of the sucrose. 17% of honey is water. And the difference between honey and sugars is that there are a lot of vitamins, minerals, and other things also present in honey. So generally speaking, diabetics also should not consume large quantities of honey, but replacing refined sugar with honey may definitely have an advantage in diabetes. See, fructose has a low glycemic index of 19, whereas glucose has 100%. The glycemic index is 100, and fructose is dominating in honey. So that means that the glycemic index of honey is less than glucose based sugars. And there is also another research finding that the honey has a lot of antioxidants, and it may protect the pancreas from oxidative stress. There is a study. I'm able to tell this because just recently I wrote an article about honey and diabetes. So I'm telling from the findings of what I reviewed at that time. So there are Sprague Dally rats which were fed with honey for about 60 months. And when they found that these rats HbA1c levels decreased and HDL cholesterol increased. And healthy diabetic patients with hypertriglyceridemia, they tried dextrose or sucrose and honey, and they found that people who took honey had better outcomes in hypertriglyceridemia. So we can generally say that honey is a better option than other types of sugars for diabetic patients, but don't think that we can uh, eat a lot of honey and overeat honey. You can use honey in diabetes in proper quantities. Definitely it is more advantageous than other type of sugars.
Thank you, sir. Delegates, kindly post your questions in the chat box. I have one more question, sir.
Yes.
Even VADA predominant person, high levels of lipids, how we could manage them?
Yeah. See, as I told earlier, in Vata persons, high lipid level may come due to many reasons. We have to find that out. As a Krisha person getting high lipids could be due to one of the reasons is genetic factors. So then it is a little bit more difficult to manage. We will have to use Medohara medications and control diet. We cannot go for heavy. That's why I told today I am talking more about this Thaulya pathology, where weight is one major factor. Here, weight reduction will not bring a reduction in the sugar level. One other reason why Vada people can get high fat is that stress itself can increase cholesterol. I don't know how many of you have thought about it. Vata people can easily get mentally stressed. So in them, reducing stress will also be very helpful. I have read about the story of an experiment, monkeys experiment. It's a very cruel experiment, where monkeys, they are mates. Monkeys also are romantic. I didn't know about it until I read about this experiment. So you are making the mate, female monkey is being placed with another male monkey, and its mate monkey is made to watch this female in distress. And they found that, and they gave diet also. They looked at diet plus this, and they found that monkeys which were not stressed, even when they had a high fat diet, their cholesterol levels did not increase. But these monkeys who had to see their girlfriends being put with a male monkey, they were so stressed that their cholesterol levels shot up even though they were not on a high lipid diet. So the whole cholesterol thing is not just diet related, even mental. I didn't go into all those things because we cannot discuss all that. So if it is a vata person, we know vata person is always anxious, stressed, and so that itself, and we can see in our practice also, a lot of people, very thin people, come with very high levels of cholesterol. And I have observed many of them are, very stressed in their life, in office and all that. So stress reduction methods, then medications to correct their metabolism. Those things will have to be advised. And too much of Rupshana approach in a Vata person will be very harmful.
So one more question, sir. Is eating less is recommended for obese person for weight reduction with Lekaniya Dravya medicines?
See, you always eat what is needed. That's what I told you, my own experiments. When I reduced my diet too much, I got anxiety also. My mental, I couldn't understand what was going on. Then I realized that I'm not giving enough food for my body. So body will need its necessary food. Don't reduce your nutrition. Just balance it with your activity. So one major thing, instead of reducing food, timing the food correctly is more helpful. Studies have shown that eating a heavy meal in the morning, even if you want to eat little junk food, if you eat it in the morning, it's not so harmful. If you eat that same food in the evening, it will be more harmful. So I would advise that you change your timings. Try to avoid in meal. Adhyashanam you try to avoid. As Ayurveda said, Adhyashanam is a major factor. So don't reduce your nutrition. Your body needs nutrition to preserve itself. Otherwise, you will get nutritional deficiency. Change the timing. One good thing Ayurveda has mentioned, Sayam Pradar Manushyanam Bhojanam Veda Sammadam. And Pradarashe Tvajirnebi Sayam Asho no Dushyati. दुष्टेषु सायमाशे दुष्टे सायमाशे tu pradarasho pradushyati. So if you, the indigestion that is caused by your evening meal is going to affect your metabolism. The indigestion caused by morning meal is not going to affect you. Prag alpa vanirhi bunjano nakhi ajirnena pidiyade. Even if you are having less agni, if you eat in the morning, early morning, I mean, not early morning, in the morning part of the day, it is not harmful. But eating in the evening is very dangerous. There is a study which showed that people who were, two groups were given same meal. One group was allowed to eat only once in the morning and a light meal in the evening. Other group was allowed to eat the same quantity whatever time they wanted. And after a few days, when they checked, they found that the group which ate food, the same quantity of food in their own timings, their metabolism was disturbed. Other studies have also shown that if you take excess meal in the night, it takes more time for the body to stabilize the lipid and glucose levels. The same food, if you eat in the morning, the glucose and lipid levels stabilize much earlier. So, okay, it was a long answer to your question, but my point is that more than reducing the food, it is the quality, quantity. Hitashi syat, mitashi syat, kala bhoji jidendriya. So bring these three principles. Don't deprive for a weight loss program, don't deprive your body of nutrition. In my experience, it's possible to have very good diet, not feel that you are, reducing so much, and still you can reduce your weight. That should be the policy that we are following.
Thank you, sir. One last question, sir.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the ways to reduce visceral fat.
Yeah.
So what's the ratio of water to be added to curd?
Yeah. Not. I think you're asking about takra. There are many ways of making takra. By diluting curd or by removing the fat. Udhrida sneha. So if you want to make the takra that can reduce fat in your system, you have to remove completely the fat. No use adding water. If you add water, it will not help for obesity. You have to make takra by removing the fat. taking the butter out of the curd, what remains, that takra alone is helpful for obesity management.
Sir, I guess it's all for today, sir.
Thank you.
Shall we wind up, sir?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us such a beautiful and expanding our vision about the quote, Nahi Stulasya Beshajam. Every time you deliver something in our platform, you take us long way deep into the horizons of Ayurveda and inspire us to work more to learn this holistic science. Thank you so much, sir. And one more announcement. We, DIKSHA Academy, has also conducted an Ayur Potion 2022, a great Indian cooking contest. And the winner of this contest is Dr. Farsana K, second year PG scholar, VPSV Ayurveda College, Kottakkal. Congrats, Dr. Farsana K. Rome was not built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. You don't have to build everything you want today, but just lay brick. We Team Diksha has made a humble effort to lay bricks to build our dream of propagating Ayurveda with its very authentic essence to the entire world. From the bottom of our heart, we express a huge gratitude to all the participants of AyurCon 2022. We had participants who even learned new technical process to participate in our contest and join session amidst their busy schedule. All the efforts they have put to bring out their best is extremely appreciable. Last but not least, I thank all the guest speakers of AyurCon 2022 who graced the glory of our program with their thought-provoking session. Team Diksha is extremely privileged to host you all in all our platform. To know more about our upcoming programs, please stay connected with our social media updates. Once again, thank you, sir. Thank you, all delegates, and good night.